Well, we are in week 8 fantasy football. So I think if you're still kind of like up in arms about the amount of injuries we're seeing, you need to get used to it at this point because this is just how it goes. It's a violent game, physical game. Like you just need to expect injuries at this point in the season in fantasy football. But really what separates week 8 from other weeks in fantasy football is the amount of bye weeks that we have. I think there's 6 total teams that are on bye week this week, so it's definitely a lighter week. I mean, there's definitely just less guys that are available to your fantasy lineup this week, which makes it tough for sure. And that's why, like, if you've watched my rankings videos the past couple of days, you've noticed, like, a dramatic change in who's making the top 30. Like, just today, for example, I mean, the amount of guys that were making the top 30 that traditionally would not be there, like guys like Tyler Algier, for example, Tyjae Spears, those types of guys would never find their way into my top 30 because of their situations, but this is a unique week. So you have to make adjustments based off that alone right there and several other factors. So we're going to obviously answer some questions about week 8 fantasy football tonight, answer some injury-related stuff. We've got Terry McLaurin returning from injury. We've got Deebo Samuel probably returning as well. Jaden Daniels out, though, so that Washington Commanders situation, a little messy right now. And I wanted to address one thing that I saw in my running back rankings. If you haven't seen my running back rankings video today, I won't spoil all of it, but I did have Saquon Barkley relatively low ranked this week, and I actually had Derrick Henry pretty highly ranked. Like, Derrick Henry's in the top 10, and Saquon is barely in the top 15. And I had someone comment that basically said, I think if you're going to rank Henry that high, you shouldn't have Saquon ranked that low. Like, you can make the case that Saquon can pop off any week. And the only reason I want to comment on it right now is because I think it's a little bit of an in-depth thing. Like, you can go to fsroundup.com right now. Let's just look up Saquon Barkley. So my problem with Saquon all year has been, if you actually watch the guy play, he doesn't look as explosive. And the other problem with it is that they are just not running the ball very well. Like, they cannot establish any sort of ground game this year. And I don't know if it's all on the offensive coordinator, but I definitely think he's not helping. And if you just look at numbers, man, like, you don't even have to watch the games to understand 3.3 yards per carry is bad. Like, that was, like, worse than a lot of years. Like, if you look at all of his stats throughout the years, I mean, years with the Giants, man, like, this is his worst average per carry year, even with the bad Giants offensive lines. Like, this is very uncharacteristic for him. Now, if we go look at a guy like Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry, I think, has gotten a lot of flack, and I've said it over the weeks. The difference between Saquon and Henry is that Derrick Henry is a guy that, if you actually look at it per numbers basis and watch him, he actually still looks good. And he's averaging 5 yards per carry. Now, the problem with him has been game script, because Henry is at his best when the Ravens are winning and he's able to bleed the clock. Well, they haven't been able to do that because they haven't had Lamar. And he also doesn't have that additional rushing threat of Lamar as well. So he's had lower fantasy games. My point being is that there's a clear path forward for a guy like Derrick Henry where I don't really see one for Saquon Barkley. Like, he's just going to have to flip a switch, or this offense is going to have to figure out the play calling or whatever the really big internal issues are. So I just wanted to touch on that. I know we've got a super chat waiting. Just wanted to put that to bed really quick. Austin Swink, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Appreciate you being in here. Do I play Goddard, who is limited with a calf, or the tight end from the Chargers tonight? Well, that's tomorrow night. So yeah, tomorrow night is when the Chargers are playing. So I'm glad that there's a question about Oronde Gadsden right out of the gate. So I haven't, tomorrow, just by the way, like, you guys are going to see my tight end rankings and quarterback rankings tomorrow night before the game. So you can expect to see Oronde Gadsden on there somewhere. But I did want to discuss this further because I think that the hype on this one is going a little over the edge for me. Like, you can look back to all the other weeks this year, and Oronde Gadsden has been involved. Like, there's no question that he's definitely seen involvement and everything like that, but it's been spotty, and they still do utilize Tyler Conklin. They utilize Will Disley. Like, they've utilized several different tight ends, like Tanner Fisk. I mean, they've utilized several different guys in different situations. So, like, I don't... Listen, if you actually look at him, just look at the guy. I mean, he looks like a physically imposing beast, right? Like, the guy is definitely, like, a physical freak. But I would also say this, man, like, he's just not, like... And I would also say that he definitely is, like, an athletic type of guy if you watch the guy play. But I just don't think that he's going to become some, like, very pivotal piece to the offense all of a sudden. I mean, they still do have a really good wide receiver trio. I mean, they've got Keenan Allen, who's consistently seeing at least like 7 targets per game. You've got Ladd McConkey, who's been basically seeing about that much on a per game basis. And QJ, who has spotty production, but he still sees about a targets. Like, just look at the target amount between those 3 guys alone last week, right? 14 for Keenan, 13 for Ladd. That's 27 between the two. Then you add another 5. That's 32 pass attempts for Justin Herbert. That's a lot. That's a lot of pass attempts. And then another 9, that's 42 total pass attempts. Well, the only reason they did that many is because they were trailing and had to catch up to the Colts. I don't think that's going to be the case every week. And this week against the Vikings, like, it's not that I dislike the matchup. I'm just here to tell you I think this Oronde Gadsden hype has gone a little too far. And with Dallas Goedert, let's get the injury report on Dallas Goedert and what happened to him today. I know he was injured, so he was limited, is what CBS was saying. CBS is garbage, but hopefully they have it right, because I don't see it anywhere else. Does Philly site have it up? Okay, so yeah, Dallas Goedert was limited in practice today. So, yeah, I do think that if Dallas Goedert plays, I'll still go with Goedert personally. I think that he's been involved enough on a weekly basis for me to be able to enjoy playing. Like, it's not that I enjoy it, but like, I feel more comfortable playing Goedert still over Oronde Gadsden. I think I just want to let this one marinate a little longer. I think there's definitely a possibility where they could use Disley again. They could also use Tyler Conklin again. Like, I don't view this as like him taking over and him always getting like more than 7 targets per game. I think it's more likely that Goedert does. So I'll take Goedert against the Giants. Appreciate the super chat. That is how you jump the line. You can jump the line and get your question answered immediately by doing a super chat. Alexis Bolanos, appreciate the super chat. Good to see you in here too. Just traded for Sam Darnold, Derrick Henry, and Myers, hoping he gets out of the Raiders. Gave up Hurts, T-Mac, and Diggs. I already got Dak as my quarterback. What are your thoughts? Well, I look at trades, and I always want to assess like what if you got a star, right? And many people would say like Derrick Henry. Again, this is the conversation we just had before I started answering questions about Henry, who I still consider a fantasy star. Like, I think we're about to see a second half resurgence from Derrick Henry because the Ravens are going to get Lamar back and they're going to start rattling off wins with their soft schedule over the next couple of weeks. Like, I've got this one pinned with Henry. I think buying low on Henry right now is a fantastic move for your team. And I think that getting Darnold too, you know, the funny thing about Darnold is that he's been pretty good in fantasy for several weeks this year. Like 100% startable. Last week, he obviously threw an interception and didn't, have anything, particularly special. But like week 6, 20 fantasy points. And week 5, 28 fantasy points. Like, this guy has had some pretty good performances in fantasy. And again, you don't have to start him. Like, you've got Dak already. So Dak is your starting quarterback. And then if you wanted to truly like upgrade your team, you could trade Dak and just roll with Darnold. Like, I don't think there's a huge problem rolling with Darnold. I wouldn't say it's like a move I would shoot for right now, but I think it's a really good move because I just don't think that like giving up Jalen Hurts, while I do think Hurts is very good, and that's another thing. Hurts is a top 5 quarterback in fantasy right now. And I can tell you guys, I was big on Hurts in the offseason, mostly because I viewed him as a bust, not a bust-proof player necessarily, but I viewed him as a value in drafts that would be better than he was last year. And he's also just not injured very much, knock on wood. He seems to stay pretty healthy, so that's a reason I like Hurts, because I don't feel like he's going to be a problem. But if you can get an upgrade as far as Derrick Henry goes, and he comes through on the promise that I think is going to happen with him the rest of the season, it was 100% worth it, because along with that, you're giving up flexible options, right? You're getting a true starting running back 1 or running back 2, and potentially a flexible option as well if Jacoby Myers comes back. And you gave up 2, depth pieces / flexible pieces on a weekly basis. Like, I don't have a problem with this at all. I don't love giving up Hurts by any means, but I do think that it's worth it if I can get Derrick Henry, who I, again, fully believe that he's going to have a second half breakout this year. So I'm good with it. I'm totally on board. Appreciate the super chat. Good to see you in here. Adrian, good to see you in here. Appreciate the super chat. Adrian, hope you have already re-signed up for FS Roundup and claimed the lower price point. I have Allen and Mayfield. My gut saying Mayfield because it's a good matchup. I feel like Josh doesn't have any weapons. Am I overthinking? I would say if you were deciding and contemplating between like Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen, you'd be overthinking. Like Aaron Rodgers is like, he had one dominant game this year. I mean, the Jets was a dominant game too. That was the dominant game, but the other good game, really good game, was the Bengals, and it's like, that Josh Allen just got a higher floor. So like if you were asking me, am I crazy for debating Rodgers and Josh Allen? I'd say maybe not crazy, but it's not something I would do. But when I look at the option of Baker, right? Like Baker has done well enough for me to always consider him a play, right? Like Baker Mayfield, for the exception of last week, like he's been a really good fantasy quarterback over the weeks. 19 points, 24 points, 19 points, 17 points, 19 points, and 22. Like Baker's been great. Now I will say this, Baker doesn't have many receivers either. Godwin's out another week. Mike Evans is missing. He's like gone. And Egbuka, I said this on today's wide receiver rankings, I don't think he's healthy. I really don't. I think that Monday night kind of showed me he didn't look very healthy. So I've got my own issues with Baker Mayfield personally. I do think that he's struggling right now, and he's out there because he's tough, and they just need him to kind of be a decoy. Now, he got 12 targets last week. He wasn't a decoy necessarily, but my point is that I don't think that he's fully healthy. And so I could see it not working for Baker as well as it would work for Josh Allen. Like, the thing with Josh Allen, man, is that for years now, since Diggs left, like, he's been dealing with no receivers there, and he's still been lights out in fantasy. Like, Baker, as good as Baker is, Baker's very good. He doesn't have the floor of Josh because Josh has Baker has rushing upside to a degree, but Josh Allen, his floor and ceiling combo to me is just better than Baker's. And again, it's no slight to Baker, but Josh Allen, 17 points in week 6, 20 points in week 5, 25 points in week 4. Baker hasn't done 25 or 23 points in week 3, 11 points in week 1, and 39 in week 1. Like that, you just don't get that from Baker, man. You really just don't. So I really do think that he's just a better option this week. I really do think that if I had to choose between the two, I would have to pick Josh Allen. And it's not that Baker's a bad player. It's just that I think that if you're pointing out that Josh doesn't have any weapons, you could also say the same thing about Baker Mayfield. So I think it's kind of a moot point to go off of the weapons alone. So they both have good matchups. I'll take Josh Allen. Appreciate the super chat, man. Always good to see you in here. Tyler Sperry, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Mariota, Mac Jones, Cousins if Penix is out, or Wentz. But in the Vikings game, I would have 3 players. Well, I'm curious to know what your other 3 are, because it's not like I don't have a problem if you have, if you have in the Vikings game. Who's your option in the Vikings game? Because Mariota is playing the Chiefs, Mac Jones is playing the Texans, and Penix is playing the Penix and Cousins are both playing the who are the Falcons playing this week? Why am I blanking? Atlanta, Miami. So like I don't see a Minnesota option here unless you're Wentz. I'm sorry. Yeah, you've got Wentz as an option. So I'm curious to know what your other matchup options are there, because if you have like Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey, or like Ladd McConkey and Jordan Mason as your other two options, that doesn't bother me. But if you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison going in this one, then going with Carson Wentz is a little risky, because it's not like if it was Baker Mayfield, I'd feel fine putting out Baker with both those receivers, because it would just maximize the upside, and I don't see much downside from doing that. But I could 100% see the downside of playing Wentz with Addison and Justin Jefferson. But again, if you have like Keenan Allen or Ladd McConkey as one of them, and you were just worried about playing three players in the same matchup, I wouldn't worry about that as much. Now, I don't particularly think that he's like the greatest play ever. But I will say this, like Mac Jones has been a little bit of a problem lately with turnovers, and he's playing a defense that I do not want to play. Like his defense he's playing, not good. The Houston Texans in the last 2 weeks, not been good for Mac Jones. So I do think there's going to be a weakness that could get exposed this week for Mac Jones. I would probably end up playing Wentz over Jones. Mariota is the really big question is with Mariota, because like on the surface, the rushing upside should help with Mariota. But if you just kind of look back to the weeks with Mariota, like for example, week 4 against the Falcons, I mean, he had 2 rushing attempts for 20 yards. 15 fantasy points isn't going to kill you, but it's not the best. Then you have 19 points. So, yeah, I mean, he's done okay. So against the Chiefs, I don't love the matchup, but the rushing upside is there. So I would play Mariota over Mac Jones and Wentz. So it comes down to Cousins and Mariota. And I think for me, I would probably play Cousins over Mariota, because Cousins I can see doing well in a dome game against the Dolphins. If Cousins was playing the Minnesota Vikings or the Houston Texans or the Denver Broncos defense, I would say, let's stray away from that one. He could throw some interceptions. Miami's defense is not good. So, I could see him taking advantage of a bad defense. So, if Cousins plays, I'll play Cousins, but if he doesn't play, my next best option is Mariota. And again, I want to make it clear to everybody, quarterback and tight end rankings are not up to date on the site until usually Wednesday nights after I'm done with the live stream here tonight. They'll probably be up to date, but usually it's either Wednesday night or Thursday morning. So still tinkering with some things with quarterbacks and tight ends, but I definitely feel pretty good about this one. Appreciate the super chat. Alias, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Start 1, 2 if Jacobs is out. Debo, Khalil Shakir, Ayamainer got Ertz if Debo is out. Can't believe the Raiders couldn't even get a field goal. Alias, I remember we were talking before the games on Sunday, and you said that you had some money on the Raiders. And I was like watching, just because, Alias, you're one of the true fans in here, and I love you. I was watching that game at my in-laws' place, just thinking to myself, every time the Chiefs put up another touchdown, I was just thinking to myself, man, I wonder how Alias is doing right now. Like, he cannot be in a good position, but it's tough, man. I mean, that is really brutal. I don't think Jacobs is going to be out. I'll just kind of lead with that. Josh Jacobs, if he was able to play last week, I feel like he's going to be good to go. I mean, he carried a basically full workload, and he did not appear to re-injure it when I watched that game. So I'm not really worried about Josh Jacobs particularly, but we'll address it as if he misses the game. Debo, I think, is a fine play. he already did well against, I don't remember who it was, but he did fine with Marcus Mariota. So I don't worry about the matchup and the quarterback situation with Debo as much as some people might. I don't have a problem with this one. Like, Debo, I think, is a fine play. Khalil Shakir, I'd play Debo over Khalil Shakir. I'd play Debo over Ayamainer. Honestly, like, the funny thing about Ertz is that I was talking to people in the live stream, and you were probably there, Elias, on the live stream on Sunday morning when I was going through tight ends. I had some Ertz questions, and people were like, should I drop Ertz? Like, what should I do with him? And I kept telling people, like, the thing is that he went through that bad stretch without Jaden Daniels, and I think that, like, with Jaden Daniels back, he had one bad game, and people took that as, like, oh, he's done. And it's like, no, dude, like, that's just one bad game with his quarterback who loves him. And last week he got back in the end zone. Like, Jaden Daniels loves Zach Ertz. But if you look at the weeks that Jaden Daniels did not play, you're going to find some bad weeks in there. I mean, he had 4 targets in this week 4 matchup. He had 3 targets in the week 3 matchup. Like, he's not as important to Mariota as he is to Jaden Daniels. So, yeah, I would play the receiver. I would play Khalil Shakir over Ertz particularly. Debo's definitely my favorite because, again, you can look back at the weeks that they had without Jaden Daniels, and you'll see some good weeks in there for Debo Samuel. The first game wasn't that great against the Raiders, but the game against the Falcons, I mean, he dominated. He had 20 fantasy points in a full PPR format. That's pretty dominant. So, yeah, I think I'll stick with Debo as the number 1 guy. And if he's out, I'll go with Khalil Shakir because he's been the most steady option for Buffalo and Josh Allen. And I also think that he's the most I just think he's the one that you could trust the most to give you a solid floor. Whereas, like, Ayamainer, even last week when he was, like, the wide receiver 1 in theory, wasn't that good. And Ertz, again, I think that he loses importance if it's not Jaden Daniels. So I'll go Debo for sure, and if Jacobs is out, I'll go with Khalil Shakir. Appreciate the super chat. Always good to see you in here. Cash Money, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Was offered CD, Chase Brown for Diggs, T, Derrick Henry. Full PPR running backs, JT, Henry, Mason, Marks. Wide receivers are Ramon, Ra, Puka, T, Diggs, Hunter. Would you do that or keep Henry? So you're going to get CD Lamb and Chase Brown for Diggs, T. Higgins, and Derrick Henry. So basically what you're going to get is one, awesome starter who never leaves your lineup, and one guy who you will never feel comfortable flexing. I mean, there is at no point, I think the one guy I could, like, juxtapose Chase Brown with is Breece Hall. And I think that they're very much in a similar category right now where, like, you don't want to play either one of these guys, but because of where you drafted them, they may be your running back too. So you kind of have to in some circumstances. But at least with Breece Hall, there's the threat that he gets traded to a different team. So, like, there could be upside in future weeks for Breece to become a good fantasy back again. Chase Brown's stuck in Cincinnati, man. They're not trading him, and he's just in a position where I don't see how he revives his value. So Chase Brown is like a deadlock, like, never going to be able to play him. So we have to keep that in mind. With Diggs, you're in a similar-ish position. Like, Diggs is a wild card. Like, at least with Diggs, he has upside, but you don't really know when to play him. Right? Like, last week, he gets, 7 targets again, coming off of a week where he had 3 targets. So, like, it doesn't, like, it's hard to kind of know when to play Diggs because he's very hot and cold. But at least with him, there's upside. T, as well, there's upside to play him too. And then giving up Henry is really the piece that matters because, I've spent weeks now calling Derrick Henry a buy low rather than a sell. But, of course, getting CeeDee Lamb changes the game, and I still prefer CeeDee Lamb as an option in fantasy over Derrick Henry. So your running backs are JT, Henry, Mason, Woody, Marks. So it would become JT, Mason, Woody, Marks, and Chase Brown, which is fine. Like, I don't have a serious problem with that or anything like that. Your wide receivers with CeeDee Lamb and losing Diggs and T would be Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, Puka. That's just so freaking lethal. I mean, think about it like this, right? You are going to give up. You're in good position either way. Like, you can't look at this as a lose in any situation, because if you trade away if you trade away Derrick Henry, then your wide receiver position becomes immortal when Puka comes back. Like, immortal. And your fourth best is Travis Hunter, who's starting to break out. Like, that's a win. And I think you can make do with your running back position, with Mason being your running back too, and possibly an evolution of Woody Marks. So Chase Brown really becomes your your running back 4. Whereas if you held on to Derrick Henry, like, I'm hoping that he breaks out, and I believe he will, but I think I'd take the immortality of the wide receiver room. I think your team build, your roster makeup is in a position to where I would take this type of deal, because I think it makes sense for your team to have that immortality at wide receiver. So I think I would do that. That's a really even trade. I don't think that either side comes out clearly on top. It really comes back to the fact that however that guy's team is built is going to be the determining factor of who wins this trade. Because for you, this is definitely a win, but you're losing a good player too, and 2 players that are startable, but you've got a ton of other guys behind them that are startable too. Appreciate the super chat. Michael Merowitz, appreciate the super chat. Always good to see you in here. Pick up Brashad or Benson. Running backs are Chase Brown, ETN, Rico, and KW9. Wide receivers are CD, Wilson, Jawan, Tez, and Jawan. Juan and Juan. I'm assuming you meant Jawan. So if you could kind of clarify that for me, that'd be good. But I think that, Brashard or Benson, that's a tough one. It really is. Like, weeks ago, I would have easily said Trey Benson. Like, we've got a ways to go with Brashard Smith, but that's just how fantasy football works, man. It's like, things change by the hour. And I'm not joking when I say that. Like, things change by the minute based on any kind of updates we get. So weeks ago, I would have said easy Trey Benson, because the guy, like, when he comes back, I still would assume that they'll want to make him the lead back. Like, Bam Knight and Michael Carter have been serviceable in the absence of Trey Benson, but I think they want to see what they have with Trey Benson. So I would be 100% leaning to the side that they will do that with Trey Benson when he's available. But there's just no guarantee, man. I said this when he got injured. There's no guarantee that he breaks out anymore. And I'm bummed about it, because I was really big on Trey Benson before the start of the season. And there's no guarantee at this point that he ever breaks out. Like, it might not ever happen. So I'm worried about him. Whereas with Brashard Smith, I mean, I said it, I think that weeks ago we were at that point where it was like, that's a couple weeks down the road. Maybe you can hold off. Now it's becoming a reality. Like, I will say this. Typically in blowout games, I always tell people, in blowout games, one way or the other, if you lose by a bunch or if you win by a bunch, don't take too much from that game. Because a lot of times, like, backups will come in, starters will come out, take your foot off the gas type of thing. But I will say this, Brashard Smith, actually, this could be, on one hand, deceiving, because you might look at this and say, wow, Brashard Smith got 19 opportunities. I wonder if all that was in the second half. It wasn't. Like, Brashard Smith was involved in this offense in the first half. And if you actually watch the last couple of games, that's been a trend. Like, he's getting more and more involved on a weekly basis. So I typically, like I said, don't take much from, like, blowout games. And I do think maybe it is even inflated a little bit, because it was never a competitive game. But I will say this, it's going with the trend that I think is real. And the thing I keep coming back to with Brashard Smith, and I think a lot of people probably don't even know who I'm talking about, Jerick McKinnon. Several years ago, he was a Kansas City Chief, and I think he's retired by now. Let me see if I can look him up in our database. Jerick McKinnon. So he's in our database on FS Roundup, and you can see that this guy was a Kansas City Chief in 2022. Now, his rushing upside was never that high. He was fine, but he was never like a lead carry guy. But if you look at the receiving in 2022, he had 9 total receiving touchdowns and 71 targets. Like, Jerick McKinnon became a league winner in 2022 on the Chiefs as the year went on. Like, he did not start that way, but that's how it turned out. That's what's flashing in my head. Like, playing fantasy all these years, you make connections and, like, you draw patterns with certain guys. Brashard Smith is reminding me of Jerick McKinnon. So I feel like I would be doing everybody here a disservice by telling you guys to go with Trey Benson because he's on a worse team and we don't even know, like, at this point, if he's going to break out. I mean, earliest he comes back is week 10. That's all the reports are saying. And let's say he comes back week 10. Well, it could take him like 2 to 3 weeks to actually look like the player that he was starting to look like. So that would be by week 13. So it's like he has a really small window to be really good for your fantasy team. Brashard Smith, man, he's just getting better and better. I don't know, man. I think I'd go with Brashard Smith. It's tough. I love Trey Benson. I want both of them, to be honest. But if I had to choose between the two, it's Brashard Smith. I really do see the Jerick McKinnon league winning potential with this guy. I can't, man, it's tough, but I have to do it. Appreciate the super chat, man. Good to see you in here as always. That was a good thinker right there. That was a good thinker. Adam Thompson. Good to see you in here. Appreciate the super chat. Adam, I hope you renewed your membership at FS Roundup as a premium member as well. Drop from $8.88 a month to $6 per month. Make sure to claim the new price to all existing customers. What running back could I trade for? I have JSN, Egbuka, Pickens, Pearsall, and McMillan at wide receiver, and CMC, Chase Brown, Dowdle, and Hubbard at running back. Just looking for another solid running back for playoffs. Currently 6-1. So I'm going to give you a couple of ideas because I think that you're 6-1 and you've got a clear foundational piece, right? And that guy is Christian McCaffrey. Got some ice. So I could tell you, I'm actually going through a very similar experience of one of my redraft leagues. It's in a league with my in-laws, and I'm 5-2 in that league, and my foundational piece is McCaffrey as well. And I was thinking about trades through the past couple of weeks, and really today I was kind of like looking at that team, and I was like, could I do anything to make this team better? And I set out a couple offers. And I was thinking, it crossed my mind at one point. I was like, would I ever trade Christian McCaffrey? Like, because I always talk about on my videos how I do still have that fear in the back of my head that hasn't gone away, which is I think he could get injured. And again, knock on wood every time I talk about the guy. But I do worry. So I was like, would I ever trade him? And then I got to the conclusion. I was like, no, I wouldn't do that because it would be completely destroying the foundation of the team. I'm trying to make trades to make the team better around McCaffrey. And so for that, to that, I say, like, McCaffrey is he's your central piece right now, right? Like, you don't trade Christian McCaffrey. So I look at this team and I'm like, you're 6-1 for a reason, right? Because it's not just McCaffrey. You had a serious spike couple of weeks from Dowdle, which helped your team tremendously. JSN has been fantastic. Egbuka has been fantastic. Pickens has been fantastic. Ricky Pearsall provides upside. And McMillan is, a very solid option as well. So, like, I think that if you're going to make a trade for a running back, the real question is there room for you to become immortal at running back? Because I love your receivers, but I will say this. I don't view them as immortal because Pickens, to me, has always been a guy. I think it's because I already started out the offseason. Like, during the offseason, I did not like Pickens. I mean, if you were with me in the offseason, you'll know that Pickens was not a guy that I wanted. And I was telling people to not draft him. Well, obviously, I look like a big dummy for saying that. So, I still have trouble viewing Pickens as like a long-term option with CeeDee Lamb back. Because let's just look at last week, right? Like, when CeeDee Lamb came back into the fold, Pickens was still good on a per-touch basis, on a per-opportunity basis, but he dropped to 6 targets. Like, you know, I don't think of him as like a locked and loaded wide receiver one. Whereas I think of guys like Egbuka and JSN as true wide receiver ones in fantasy. So you've got 2 of them. I would like to keep them. I want to get a guy like Pickens, package him together with I would personally package him together with like Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard, the collective, just so you can give the opponent the 2 options. And I would try to go big. Like, I would personally try to go with somebody like, you know, a Jonathan Taylor, a Bijan Robinson, a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Josh Jacobs at the running back position. That's personally something I would do. Because, again, I'm very okay with, like, you have flexible options, right? Like, assuming it's a 1 flex league with 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers, you have your flex league, you have your flex position ironed out already. You've already got Pickens, so if you give him up, it becomes Ricky Pearsall, and then you get Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. Actually, I'm walking through that. It doesn't make a ton of sense. Scratch everything I just said. Sorry to do this, but like I'm trying to think of ways to like really take your team over the top, but I don't want to cripple it either. So I'm going to start over by saying I think I would take Pickens and Chase Brown and try to get a James Cook or a Derrick Henry type of situation, because I could take Derrick Henry or James Cook as my RB2 and then still have depth with Dowdle and Hubbard. So I do think that is a situation I would prefer to do, because that would be like a big overhaul. If you just want to do what you originally said, which is just a solid running back option, you could probably package together like Terry McLaurin and Chase Brown and try to upgrade to somebody like let's look through some running backs. Chase Brown and Terry McLaurin for running backs like Javonte Williams, maybe. DeAndre Swift on the rise. Quinshon Judkins, maybe. Cam Scatteroo, possibly. That's probably Kyron Williams in a buy low situation. That's probably the group of running backs I would go for what you asked, which is a solid running back for the playoffs. I think that's a good strategy right there if you don't want to completely overhaul your flex position, which you would do by giving up Pickens. So that's what I would do. Yeah, I think that's a good move. Appreciate the super chat, Adam. Always good to see you in here. Tariq Washington, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. I'm 4-1 in a 13-team full PPR. Any trade ideas or waivers? Quarterbacks are Mayan Dart, running back Pacheco, Blue, Bam, Manungai, Spears, Robinson Jr., wide receiver Puka, AJ, Nico, Egbuka, Coker, Tez, Ayuk, tight end Kraft, Warren, and Waller. So this is something I do on team breakdowns, right? So like I always talk about one particular thing, which is I don't like to have 2 quarterbacks or 2 tight ends on most of my teams in fantasy, unless I'm in a deeper league. Like, you're in a 13-team league, so that probably means that your waiver wire is thinner, and there's not as many startable options at those onesie positions. Like, because in most, like, traditional 10 or 12-man leagues where you have, like, 6 bench spots or 5, a lot of times in those types of leagues, you'll find a lot of like startable options on the waiver wire at quarterback or tight end, right? So like I don't think that there's any need to really like have two or more quarterbacks or tight ends. In your situation, it's probably a little different because in your situation, it's probably a different 13-team league. So it may be ideal for you to keep two. But I still look at this and I say to myself, you've got two really good tight ends, right? Like Waller's on the IR. You could go ahead and drop him, to be honest. Like you don't have anyone else on your team that's injured right now, or you do have Ayuk. So I don't know how many IR spots you have. I'm going to assume you have one IR spot, and to that I would say just go ahead and kick Darren Waller to the curb because he's on IR. He's going to miss at least the next 4. I've seen a lot of reports that indicate he'll miss a good chunk of the season, and I always viewed Darren Waller as more of a ticking time bomb, to be honest. Like I grabbed him off waivers in one of my leagues, and I flipped him for Ladd McConkey a couple weeks ago, and I feel great about it. And the reason I did it at the time was because I viewed him as a ticking time bomb, and it's gone off. So, like, you can drop Waller because it's just going to take up a spot on your bench. Waiver wire guys, like, you should be trying to look for Brashard Smith if he's still out there. You should try to look for guys like Darius Slayton, I think, is one of my favorite pickups of the week when he comes back to the fold, especially to stack with Dart as another flexible option for you. Those are two big waiver wire choices that I would think of. But I'm looking at these tight ends. It just doesn't feel right. Because I'll say it like this. Warren and Kraft are both playable on a weekly basis, right? Like, you could get away with playing those two guys. One of them is your tight end, and the other one is a flex. But when I look at your team and I see Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Emeka Egbuka, A.J. Brown, like, in order to start both of those tight ends, you'd have to leave someone on the table in a big way, right? So, like, it doesn't make sense to have all those tight ends. If you want to have two tight ends, fine. But let's try to get someone back in a trade or on the waiver wire. Because I would bet, like, maybe a Rondé Gadsden's on waiver wire. Maybe somebody like Hunter Henry's on the wire. Maybe someone like Mason Taylor's on the wire. To where they could fill in as your tight end, too, on your depth chart. So what I want to do, personally, is I want to grab Tucker Kraft. And I think the glaring weakness here on your team is your running back position. Because having Pacheco as your running back one is not great. Not great. 4-1 is great, but you clearly have a weakness there. So I do think that I look at this and say, I want to grab Kraft and either Nico or A.J. Brown off a hot week, and I want to try to upgrade at running back in a big way. I want to see if I can get Kyron Williams or James Cook or Devon Achane or Cam Scatterboot, someone of that type of mold. High-end running back 1, low-end running back 2, and maybe see if you can get a tight end thrown in there, right? Like if they have a Zach Ertz or a Hunter Henry, like you'll be fine with them as your tight end too, because again, like in order to play one of those tight ends, you're going to have to bench one of those other receivers when they're all healthy. It doesn't make sense from a team building perspective. So my idea personally is to grab Kraft and either AJ or Nico and try to trade for a running back upgrade like we just talked about, because that's your bottom line. Your running backs, if you get killed this year, it's going to be because of your running backs. Like they are just not good enough. You've got some breakout upside with like Tyjae Spears and Kyle Monungai, but no real promise here. And nobody who's like a consistent start. Like, again, having Pacheco as your consistent RB1, not a good recipe. And I'm glad you're 4-1, but I think that's what's going to kill your team in the end if you don't make a move. So we've got to act aggressively to make a move now while you're in good position. You're 4-1, which is great, but let's make the move now so we can come into week 8 with a much more stable running back situation while you're not really taking away a significant flex option from your lineup. So yeah, that's what I would personally try to do. And again, I would try to target a running back off the wires. Like if Brashard Smith is out there, he's got to be scooped up. Like that guy to me is a bigger pickup than Manon guy, who I'm sure you got this week. But I think Brashard Smith should be on. I think he should be on every team at this point, especially in the 13-team league. So if he's available, I'd pick him up. Appreciate the super chat. Tyler Sperry, appreciate the super chat. Herbert and Harden. Gadsden. Herbert and Gadsden. Oh, those are your two players on Thursday night. Going back to the question. Yeah, I don't mind. Like I said, it's not that I don't really mind playing Wentz. It's not about that. I just like the other options better. I mean, Carson Wentz, like he was actually, if you watched that game last week, it was awful. Like he was really, really terrible. The thing with Minnesota is that like they're so good offensively. They've got so much talent that it can really help, and the coaching is fantastic. It can really help turn a quarterback like Carson Wentz, who I don't think is good. Like I think Carson Wentz is well over the hill at this point. It's hard to look at a quarterback like him and think that he's a good player, and especially if you took away Kevin O'Connell. Like he would look much worse without Kevin O'Connell. So last week was so disgusting with him that, and I get it was the Eagles, but like really I just think Minnesota's offense is limited. And so I think it doesn't really matter what your options are tomorrow night. I really just think that Mariota's a better option, and if Cousins plays, he's the best option. Appreciate the super chat, man. Good to see you in here. Angel GG, what's going on? Appreciate the very generous super chat. 10-team, 1 PPR quarterback. Baker, running backs are Cook, Warren, Rashad White, RJ Harvey, Pollard, Benson. Wide receivers are Amon Ross, CeeDee Lamb, QJ, Shaheed, and Boutte. Tight end is Kraft. God offered London and Dak for Cook. Thoughts? If not, what should I target for Cook? Trying to trade him. Okay, so let's address your first question. Offered London and Dak for Cook. I'll be honest with you. I just, like, as I go through questions, I've always got an eye on the screen. And I just saw a question pass through, like, a couple minutes ago. Someone asking me if they should trade Rome Odunze. So I'm kind of answering their question as well. But it goes perfectly with what you're talking about here. When you have a player who started out really hot and they start to lose steam, I understand wanting to trade them away, but typically we see like a lot of these types of guys, right? Like we've seen it over the years, right? A player comes out hot and then they flame out and they're not the same, and they end up being bad fantasy options. Like that happens every year. Well, usually what happens is like those guys are not as involved. Usually they're not like key pieces of their team. Well, in the case of James Cook, he is a key piece of your team. And not just your team, but the Buffalo Bills. And if you look at the last 2 weeks when the Bills played, they lost 2 games in a row. And ironically, they were James Cook's more underutilized games, and he wasn't that great in them. So if I'm the Bills coaching staff, what I think is when I watch our team play, if I'm on the Bills coaching staff and I'm watching these guys and I say to myself, well, if I'm trying to find ways to win, we win when this guy's on the field. Like, it's not really a debatable question. Like, this guy, when he's on the field and when he's doing things for us, making plays, we win. We're a better football team when James Cook is the guy. And I say that to say I think that James Cook selling him right now is ill-advised because he's coming off his 2 worst performances of the season. And for that reason, he's a sell low. And I never, ever want to move off of somebody in a sell low situation. Like, the way I look at this is like anytime someone pays me to answer a question. And even if you don't pay me and I'm just answering free questions, which I'm always happy to do. I mean, I try to be as engaged in the comment section as possible. Like, anytime anyone asks me a question, I want to give full honesty. But especially if you pay for it, right? Like, it's got to be completely transparent. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that I think trading James Cook is a good move. Like, this move right here, it doesn't make much sense to me. Like, I get it on one hand, like, your wide receivers could, in theory, become, like, really, really good if you get Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb and Drake London. If London hits for the majority of the rest of the season, it could be a really good play for your team. But you're losing out on a true running back one if you do that. And your running back one becomes Jaylen Warren and temporarily Rachaad White. Like, you just kind of, you really lose an edge at running back. So, and you already have Baker at quarterback. So it's not like you're really hurting for quarterback production either. Like, Dak's good, but Baker's fine. Like, if you had Sam Darnold or Mac Jones or, like, Jaden Daniels even, who's been dealing with injuries, it would make more sense. But you have Baker, who's healthy and playing, and he's been very good with limited options. I don't think it makes sense for your team to take that trade. And to the second part of the question, which is like, if you're trying to trade Cook, I think if you want to do that really bad, I would wait. Like, it's hard for me to advise you on who to go after when he's coming off 2 bad games. Like, week 6, 8.7 fantasy points. Week 5, 4.9 fantasy points. Then he had a bye week in week 7. So he's basically been out of commission on your team for the last 3 weeks. Other teams see that, and they're going to take advantage. If they smell blood in the water, they'll take advantage if you're in a good league. So, like, I just think realistically, it doesn't make a lot of sense for you to trade him. I guess if I wanted to trade him, I would not short him, and I would try to go after guys like, you know, if you want to get a running back straight up, like, I would try to go after guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane. I would try to go after Josh Jacobs. Like, I'm not going to short myself and James Cook's value because he had 2 bad games. But again, you're going to have trouble going out there and trying to sell James Cook when he's coming off his 2 worst games. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just not a smart move in the trade market to trade someone who's coming off bad performances. Like, for example, I have Brian Thomas Jr. in one of my redraft leagues. I want him off my team desperately. Like, I'm done waiting. But I also know, like, in that league, I've got a lot of competitive dudes in there. They don't want him. Like, they see him, and if they're gonna trade for him, they're gonna undercut me, and I don't want that either. So, like, it doesn't do good for my fantasy team to do that. So I'm holding on to him right now and just putting him on my bench. So I think if you're just gonna go after James, if you're trying to sell James Cook, you gotta wait, man. And maybe you could package together like James Cook and like Quentin Johnston for, like, you know, one of the top tier running backs like Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, or maybe get like a two for two and get like Kyron Williams and, you know, Stephon Diggs or someone like that. But, like, I think I'd rather just hold on to him. I really would. Like, that's my advice to you, is I'd hold on to him. But I did give you some options there if you really desperately want him off your team. Appreciate the super chat again. Very generous. I just want to make sure people like the video, subscribe to the channel, and show your support. I'm going to get through as many as I can tonight. But if you don't get your question answered, make sure to start a start-sit poll on FS Roundup. Completely free to start-sit polls. Just create an account with us and go answer other people's start-sit polls as well on the site too. And to join and get premium features like the automatic waiver wire tool, my top 250 rankings, the comparison features on the site, hook up your team. That's all behind the premium subscription, which dropped from $8.88 a month to $6 per month. George Brennan, appreciate the super chat. Good to see you in here. Pick 3 in my dynasty: Rice, Lamb, Odunze, A.J. Brown, and Pittman. Can't afford a dud. Is it possible to sit Lamb with the Surtain treatment? Very interesting question. I could tell you listen to me because I don't know how often other channel. I don't really watch other channels, to be honest with you guys. So I don't know how often like other channels talk about CeeDee Lamb or not CeeDee Lamb. I don't know how often other channels talk about cornerback matchups when it comes to wide receivers in fantasy, but I would imagine not many because many of them don't pay attention to football and pay attention to defense. So I could tell you for a fact that Pat Surtain is going to affect CeeDee Lamb. Now, how much? I don't know. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is one of the elites, right? Like, he's in the Jamar Chase category, the Justin Jefferson category, Jackson Smith-Njigba category. Cope with it, people. He's really good. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, like, he's up there, right? So, I think that when it comes down to it, you have to look at this and say to yourself, what is it really worth it, right? Is it really worth benching CeeDee Lamb, a guy who is elite, and feeling stupid for having him have 20 points on my bench for somebody like A.J. Brown, who is he's just a ticking time bomb. Like, yes, last week was great, but all you have to do is look at the guy's game log, for example, right? And you could see the amount of issues over the weeks that he's had. I mean, week 7, again, best game of the year, great. Week 6, 14 fantasy points, not bad. Week 5, 9 fantasy points. Week 4, 2 fantasy points. Week 3, 22. Week 2, 7. Week 1, 1. Like, A.J. Brown is always prone for this. So, to me, it's not worth it to sit CeeDee Lamb for a guy like A.J. Brown. Now, I'll tell you this. I'm definitely going to start Rashee Rice, 100%. Like, I will absolutely start Rashee Rice. Even in Washington, like, even with this Washington matchup, I think they're going to end up crushing them because they don't have Jaden Daniels. But I also said this on the stream as well. Even last week, for example, right? Kansas City didn't need to be in a competitive matchup to use Rashee Rice into oblivion. Like, they targeted him 9 times in a 31-0 blowout. This game will be more competitive than that. Like, this game, I would imagine, is going to have, plenty of opportunities for Rashee Rice to, I think that Washington will put up 14 points or something like that. So Rashee Rice, I still do think is going to have a great week. I'd play Rashee Rice for sure. Rome Odunze is definitely another guy I would play. I'm doubling down on Rome. I find myself like possibly in the minority on this one. I haven't heard a ton of pushback on my comments about Rome Odunze. I think a lot of people don't really know what to do with him. To be honest with you, I think he's in this position right now to where people want to buy in, but they're struggling with it. So I do think there's like a little bit of like curiosity more so than like fear when it comes to Rome. So I do think of him as a guy who could be really good, but also could be a problem. But I'm going to bank on it because they're playing the Ravens. So I'll play Rome as well. So I'll give you this. Like, it comes down to like Rice and Michael Pittman. And Pittman's matchup in theory is fantastic. But again, I pointed this out over the weeks with Pittman. The problem with him is that he doesn't see like a consistent target share. Like he's been more consistent getting 5 to 6 targets on a weekly basis than he is getting 9. Like in week 6, he had 3 targets. Week 5, he had 5 targets. Week 4, he had 10 targets. Week 3, he had 6 targets. Week 2, he had 5 targets. Week 1, he had 8 targets. Like, Pittman has just been kind of like really good from he's been really good from the perspective of consistency and efficiency. But volume fluctuates, and week 6, he really made people suffer because of the lack of touchdown. And I'm not saying it's going to happen this week, but it's definitely more risky to play a guy who's not volume-based. Whereas with CeeDee Lamb, we know he's going to get targeted out of this world. Like, even if he's being blanketed by Pat Surtain. He's going to get like close to 10 targets in this game. I really do believe that. So I understand your hesitancy because I do talk about it a lot. Pat Surtain's a dominant defensive back, best cover corner in the league. But if it was my team, I'm still playing CeeDee Lamb. I just can't trust A.J. Brown with his volatility and Michael Pittman with his lack of consistent high target share. So I would personally still go with CeeDee Lamb with Rashee Rice and Rome Odunze. Great wide receiver room, by the way. Appreciate the super chat. So yeah, let me reiterate. Like I think you can bench him, but like at your own peril. I would not personally do it. But again, appreciate the super chat. Alias, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Second league, Jaden Higgins versus Debo. Tight end looking at guys like Likely, Washington, and Njoku are other waiver wire level tight ends. I'm glad that we're talking about Jaden Higgins too, because I think we need to talk about him as well. Obviously, it's in all likelihood going to be a game without Nico Collins because he got banged up. He got a concussion. Most of the time, like they're not going to play the week after a concussion. That just doesn't happen with most guys. The league doesn't like. First of all, I don't think the NFL. I don't think they like it when people come back from concussion the same week. So I think it's doubtful that they're going to be with CeeDee Lamb. So it obviously opens up the question, who's the guy? Well, I want to just like highlight something with Jaden Higgins. Like Jaden Higgins had 3 targets in this game. He didn't catch any of them. And if you actually watch the game, like he looked pretty bad. Jalen Noel was their clearly most effective target. And I think part of that goes into the guy really doesn't play very much. So like teams didn't have film on the guy really. But it also is, I said this, like this is kind of a deep cut of mine in the offseason, but my true hardcore fans can vet this. Like they know I said this. I actually have always preferred Jalen Noel over Jaden Higgins. Like, I drafted a ton of Jalen Noel in best ball leagues because I just think he's a better player. Like, they both came from the same school, Iowa State. I always just favored Jalen Noel. More of a precise route runner, creates separation more. Jaden Higgins, I just don't view him as that. So, without Nico this week, I think Jalen Noel is actually the better option. Like, truly, to be honest. Like, you can go to my wide receiver rankings, which is completely up to date. Actually, I'm not going to say that. I need to take out Chris Godwin. But mostly up to date. Like, you can see where I've got Higgins ranked. It's not that good. Because the other problem with it is that this offensive line, they cannot protect him. CJ Stroud is under siege. And I don't care who they're playing. He's going to be under siege. Like, they have nobody who can protect him. Like, it doesn't matter what defense they play. So I really do think San Francisco is going to get after him, and Houston pass catchers are going to be a problem in this one. It's a very clear Debo to me. Like, Debo Samuel, even without Marcus Mariota, I'll take that upside because realistically, yes, Debo's floor is low. Like, he did have one bad game with Marcus Mariota, but he also had a really good game. And Jaden Higgins' floor is 0. While his upside is maybe 10 points if he gets in the end zone, it's not that high. So I'll take Debo's ceiling easily. Tight end, you're looking at guys like Likely, Washington, Njoku, or other waiver wire level tight ends. So I will say this. If you're looking for a start this week, I would play Njoku. If Njoku plays, I'll play him because I will say the one thing that we can go off of from Dylan Gabriel is he definitely likes throwing to David Njoku. Like, it's not just Njoku. He likes to throw to Harold Fannin as well. But I do think that Njoku is a really good play if he plays because they're taking on a team that they're going to lose to pretty badly, so they're going to have to throw. The difference between what happened last week and the previous week is the Browns crushed the Dolphins, so they didn't need to throw. So they were just like running the ball with Judkins all the end of the game. So Harold Fannin has a disappointing week, but like if you look at the previous week, I mean, David Njoku had 6 targets in that game, and he was in and out of the lineup because that was the game he got injured. And then if you look at the week previous, he had 9 targets in that game, and he got in the end zone. Like, I think David Njoku is a really good play as long as he plays. If you're looking for future, though, I'm actually leaning towards Likely. Isaiah Likely, guys, this is for everybody out there. If Isaiah Likely's on your waiver wire, and this is actually specifically to one guy who was asking me about, like, team moves to make, and he had Tucker Kraft and Tyler Warren as his 2 tight ends, I think it was. Isaiah Likely is about to become a really good fantasy option. Like, I will bank on this one. Lamar Jackson comes back. He loves to throw to tight ends. The fantasy upside for guys like Likely is about to go through the roof. He's probably fully recovered, if not very close to it, coming off a bye week, and getting Lamar Jackson back changes everything in this offense. So if you need one today, I would go with Njoku. If you want one for upside and cultivation purposes, I would go with Isaiah Likely. I like the Mount. I like the big Mount Washington, but I'll personally go with Isaiah Likely as the long-term guy. Appreciate the super chat, man. Good to see you in here. Another one from Alias. Appreciate it. The same issue with running back, either Sean Tucker or P. Ryan or some waiver guys like that. Bye week and injuries are hurting. So I'll tell you this. I actually have P. Ryan pretty decently ranked in my rankings this week. Like, he is not in a bad spot of my rankings. I do think that they're close enough to where it would make sense for me to really mull this over and tell you that I had a debate in my head between, in my rankings, when I was ranking my running backs late last night, I was mulling this exact ranking of, would I rather take the touchdown upside from Tucker or Samaje Perine? Because the reason I think Samaje Perine is in play this week is because of the Jets matchup. If he was playing any other team, and I'm talking any other team, I would not want to play Samaje Perine. Like, even though he's involved, like, he is just, this offense cannot run the ball at the goal line. They cannot. They are inept at running the ball at the goal line. So if it was any other team against versus the Jets, I wouldn't want it. But versus the Jets, it definitely does make it possible for him to get in the end zone. Now, Sean Tucker's on the better offense, and he's got just as good of a matchup, so I ended up going with Sean Tucker. Even though he plays less than Chase Brown, I do think that in a world where they could be crushing the New Orleans Saints by like halftime, they could be like 21-0 on the Saints. I think that's where Sean Tucker becomes more involved. Because if you look at the week where they beat the 49ers, well, Sean Tucker got involved and he actually got in the end zone at the goal line. And that was a game where they were beating the 40. I mean, it was never particularly super close versus the 49ers. So, very, very close. I will say they're almost back-to-back in my rankings if I'm remembering correctly. But I'll go with Sean Tucker. Appreciate the super chat, man. Always good to see you in here. Brian03, good to see you in here too. Appreciate the super chat. Pitt fan to Pitt fan. What quarterback should Pitt draft? Oh, I love this. This is a good question right here. This is a fun one. I mean, they're all great, but I like talking about drafts. I think that the Steelers, I was talking to my dad about this a couple weeks ago. This could go on a long time because it could really open up. Like if I was drunk right now and I was having like a couple whiskeys, I could really go on a diatribe of like what I think the Steelers should do. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible because I think what I was telling my dad the other day, we were talking about the Steelers and we were both kind of saying, it's been a while. It's been since Big Ben retired, how we have not had a quarterback that we actually feel like we can win with. Like, it's not even just like the winning factor, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, when he plays, we feel like we have a chance against most teams. For years, we didn't have that, right? Like with Kenny Pickett, with Mitch Trubisky, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Like we over the years, we just never feel like we had a chance. And not only that, it wasn't fun to watch. Like it was just like bad football for several years straight without Ben. And so having Rodgers is just like this feeling that feels kind of foreign in a way as a Steelers fan because it's been a long time in some terms. Like obviously we're not Lions fans, we're not Browns fans. So like it wasn't an eternity, but we just got so used to Ben for so long. Anyway, my point is that I think that they should stick with, like, if Rodgers wants to come back, and I know he said it was probably his last year. I am aware that he said that. If Rodgers comes back, I am open arms with him. Open arms. Like, the way I've seen him play this year, I'm totally like, you want to come back? Like, here we are. We're ready for you. If he wants to come back. And I don't care if we have to deal with the whole saga again. If he wants to take it into April, see what we do in the draft, and then decide if he comes back, I'm all in. Like, just come back. Because, like, I don't want to start this process over. And the reason I don't is because I don't think their coaching staff and their infrastructure is good enough. And it sounds weird, right? Like, I'm not sure what kind of Steelers fan you are, Brian, because, like, you probably know this. Steelers fans, there's either the positives, the eternal positives, or the cynics. I'm a cynic. Like, I definitely am a more cynical Steelers fan because I'm sick of Mike Tomlin, and I know that's weird to say right now. They're, 4-2? No, 4-3? 5-2? They're 5-2, I think. No, they're 4-2. So it sounds weird to, like, say that I'm sick of Tomlin, but I have been sick of him since 2016. And because I think he controls everything, and I think that their coaching staff is one of the worst in the leagues. Like, I really, truly believe that. It's one of the cheapest, that's for sure. So I don't think that he is in this position to where, like, they're going to make a quarterback thrive. They're not an offense-first organization. That's just not who they are. So, like, they would need another Big Ben to really overcome and to thrive in an offense-first NFL at this point. And this year, I don't really see those quarterbacks. Like, Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU is a guy I'm interested in. I do think that Nussmeier is a physically talented guy. Same thing with Drew Aller over in Penn State. Those are two, like, physically gifted guys, but I mean, they make a lot of mistakes, man. They're not perfect, and I do think of those guys as, like, expendable and not polished enough for them to thrive in a defense-first culture, which the Steelers are. So, like, I don't think it's like the draft where I'm like, oh, there's a prospect that I think the Steelers can build up in a defense-first culture. Like, it's going to be years until I think that. I think because the only shot we would have is if we finish, like, if we had a ridiculously bad season and they were just terrible and we got access to, like, a top 3 pick. And again, this year I don't see it. Nussmeier maybe, Drew Aller maybe, but not sold on any of the quarterbacks just yet. But the season's still very young. That was a fun conversation. Appreciate that super chat. That one was fun. Lawrence Paliagas, what's going on? Appreciate the generous super chat. Very generous of you. I traded Dak, A.J. Brown, and Goddard for Mahomes and Bucky Irving. What do you think? Now I have Mahomes, Achane, Scat, Bucky, Dowdle, Jamar Chase, Rashee Rice, Kraft, Garrett, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Thoughts? I'm 5-2, by the way. Appreciate that super chat. So 5-2, you're in good position. So making trades at 5-2, it could either really derail your team or it could make it take it over the top. One of the things I rarely see evolving into a good idea is if you're 5-2 or 6-1 at this point in the season and making like a lateral move, right? Because chances are very good you didn't get to 5-2 or 6-1 without having a balanced team. Like, even for example, like the guy who drafted Jonathan Taylor in one of my redraft leagues, he's like 3-4, like not good. So like, even with that dominant of a player, like Jonathan Taylor's a top 3 fantasy player this year, and he's still 3-4. So like, my point in saying that is, like, one player is not carrying you to 5-2 or 6-1. You've got to have like a well-built team. So it's rarely a good move for any 5-2 team to make a lateral move, right? So you traded Dak, AJ, and Goddard for Mahomes, Bucky. So that, to me, doesn't feel like a lateral move. That feels like an upgrade. And I'll tell you why. Obviously, like we've been talking about it a lot tonight, Dak has been great. I mean, Dak, realistically, like, if his team was winning, and if the Cowboys, for example, were like, if they didn't have that tie and they were like 5-2, or they were like 6-1, or even 4-3, Dak would be in contention for MVP. Dak has been that good this year. But you know what's kind of interesting? Like, he has not been dominant in fantasy. As dominant as you think. Like, let's not look at his fantasy production just yet. Just look at the numbers. 16 touchdowns through 7 games and 3 interceptions. Quarterback rating of 82.3 and a passer rating of 107.6. You look at those numbers and you're like, dude, this guy is freaking crushing it in fantasy football. He's been good. I don't want to sound ungrateful and like he hasn't been good, but I will say this. Not as good as you think. Like 23 points in week 7, 22 points in week 6, 28 in week 5 was great. 31 in week 4 was great. 12 points in week 3. 23 in week 2, and then in week 1 he had like 8. So he's been okay. Like he's been very good. Anybody that has Dak, I don't want to make it sound like you have a bad quarterback situation. You don't. And anybody that's trying to trade for Dak, I'm not trying to act like he's a bad trade for target. He's not. But Mahomes he's the quarterback one in fantasy. Not being talked about because I think there's just a natural fatigue with someone like him. He's this generation's Brady. That's what he is. My generation grew up with Tom Brady at quarterback. Mahomes is this generation's Brady. So there's fatigue. That was the same thing that happened with Brady, which is that when you're great for so long, people just stop appreciating you. And, you know, speaking of Brady, he went through a period of time, and I highlighted this with Mahomes before the season because I didn't like him preseason because of his draft price. I said, just look at the last several years with Mahomes. They haven't been great in fantasy. And I highlighted Brady's, middle of his career. He was really dominant in real football, but like his fantasy performances weren't that great. And at the beginning of his career, he was great in fantasy. The middle of his career, he was okay, not great. But then towards the back half of his career, he started to have great fantasy performances again. Mahomes is starting to look like that, and now this year, he's the quarterback one in fantasy. Patrick Mahomes, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1,800 passing yards, and he's running the ball. That's key. And he's got Rice back. Like, it's hard to upgrade over Dak, but somehow you did. Dak Prescott is not as good of a fantasy quarterback as Mahomes is. Point blank, end of story. And getting Bucky, the concern obviously with Bucky is the injury. And I was concerned. But I will say this. I think it's worth it because you gave up A.J. Brown, who is going to be frustrating for anybody. Like, no matter who has A.J. Brown in your league, they're going to be frustrated. And if you have him on your fantasy team, you understand the weekly frustration that is A.J. Brown because most times you feel obligated to play him because of where you drafted him at, but then you get freaking screwed every time you do. So then you start debating, should I play him? And then you don't, and then he goes off. So, like, A.J. Brown's frustrating, can tank your week. And Goddard is a tight end that I think is definitely a tight end one when he's fully healthy most weeks, but I don't value, like, him in the same range as, like, Tyler Warren or Trey McBride or Brock Bowers when he's healthy. So, like, to me, it's worth the risk. Because, like, when Bucky, hopefully he comes back soon. After their bye week in week 9, hopefully he's back in week 10. And the moment he comes back, Bucky is automatically in your lineup every week. And you don't have to worry about it. With A.J. Brown, you worry about it. And with Dallas Goedert, you worry about it. So, I think it's worth it, man. I think that was a good move. Like, again, you're 5-2, so it's you have to make trades that upgrade your team clearly. This is a move that upgraded your team. You're giving up a guy who is flexible but not the best flex, and you've got other options. Like you've got guys like Scadaboo, you've got you've got Achane, you've got Dowdle. Like you've got other flexible options. So it's not like you gave up a ton to get Bucky, who should be really good when he comes back. So quarterback 1 in fantasy football, high end RB2, low end RB1 when he comes back. Pair him up with Achane, pair him up with Scadaboo. You're in good position. So I like it, man. I do. Appreciate the super chat, man. Again, very generous of you. Really quick, guys, just want to remind people, every one of these numbers we're going through on FS Roundup, the site, is completely free. There is a pinned comment in this chat to go to FS Roundup and go sign up for an account. There's also a link in the description to go to fsroundup.com, sign up for an account. And if you don't get your question answered here tonight, I cannot stress enough how important running a start-sit poll is on the site. It is the best thing you could do, and it's entirely free. All you have to do is create an account with us and start a start-sit poll and go vote on other polls to help them out with their decisions. Best tool on any site. But if you want advanced features like my top 250 rankings on a weekly basis, you want options like the automatic waiver wire tool, the comparison feature, the ability to link up your team, that's all for $6 a month. A fantastic value for league-winning tools. Adam Thompson, good to see you again. Appreciate the super chat. How do you feel about either Pacheco or Warren? I always love these how do I feel questions because like I have thoughts about every player. I want to start with Warren because Jaylen Warren is a guy who I think is a buy low, and I called him a buy low the other day, and I really get it. I'm kind of like jazzed about that buy low, to be honest, because everyone just like it's like consensus. Like he's viewed as a low end RB2 / like RB3 flex. All the while, the guy's averaging like 14 fantasy points per game in a half PPR format right now. Like Jaylen Warren has not been bad once this year. He hasn't been like truly fantastic. I mean, last week he had a 20-point game. That was really fun. But all of his other games, like he has not crushed you. Eight fantasy points in week 6. Week 5, that was a bye week. Week 4, he was out that week. Week 3, 13 fantasy points. Week 2, 17 fantasy points. And week 1, he had 14. So like he has not crushed you once. So I like Jaylen Warren a lot. Isaiah Pacheco, on the other hand, has crushed you time and time again. And my problem with Pacheco heading into this week is that you look at him, and the only time that he's been good in fantasy was this past week when they were in a blowout game and he got in the end zone. And they just could run out the clock. Now, I do think that he could be in a similar position again this week to where he gets in the end zone because they are going to be crushing them in this game. It's very, very possible that happens. But I will also say this. Brashard Smith is 100% on the come up. Kareem Hunt takes short yardage carries as well. So there's no guarantee they get down there in the red zone this week and it's Isaiah Pacheco again. There's no guarantee of that. With Warren, it's kind of a given. Like the Steelers, I get it. Like Kenneth Gainwell had like a brief moment where people were like, oh, is he going to take over? And it's like, no. Like Steelers fans know this. And I'm a Steelers fan. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, we love Jaylen Warren because he's a high-effort guy. We love him because of that. Steelers coaches love him for the same reason, and that's why they signed him to a contract this offseason, and he's the lead back consistently. Jaylen Warren doesn't have the threat looming over his shoulders of a younger back coming to take his bacon like Pacheco does. So if it's this week, I'm going with Jaylen Warren, and if it's for the future, I'm definitely going with Jaylen Warren. Appreciate the super chat, man. Masab123, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Start 2 half PPR. Chase Brown, Breece Hall, Higgins, McLaurin. So I think that your options here, like, if Terry had Jaden, it would be an easy Terry for one of them, but obviously Jaden being out changes the whole game. Because, like, Terry is already a risk because it's his first game back in, like, what, 5 weeks? I mean, Terry hasn't played in a long time. Let's see how long Terry was out for. Did he play in week 3? Yes, he did. That must have been the game he got injured because he didn't play in week 4. Yeah. So Terry missed 4 total games. Week 4, 5, 6, and 7. So he's coming back after missing 4 games. I don't love that. And it's a lingering groin issue, which could pop up again. So it's a risk to play Terry, especially with Mariota at quarterback. I'll say this. I think T is definitely the must start for me out of this group because Joe Flacco really has given this team hope. And he's given me hope as a fantasy analyst, I guess, by saying that he did not have this like level of upside with Jake Browning. He just didn't. And Joe Flacco is really turning things around for this offense. So I think T. Higgins is in this position to where you can look at him as a legitimate playable option on a weekly basis. I really do. I think that he's a guy that could easily have a similar week to what he had last week against the Jets. Like, they're going to be able to put up points on the Jets because they can't their defense either is going to start out good and then deteriorate over time because their offense can't get it done and they'll be on the field all game, or they'll just be bad from the start. Like, either way, they're going to move the ball. So I'll go with T as one of them. And for that reason, I'm really reluctant to play two Bengals. Very, very reluctant. Like, Chase Brown and Breece Hall are back-to-back in my rankings, and I already ranked Breece above Chase Brown, and I'll stick with that definitely because I do not want to play 2 Bengals. That is a very risky proposition. Even though the matchup is great, I do fear this one in a big way because Chase Brown last week was his best game, and it really wasn't even that good, especially in a half PPR format. He did not have 12 points in a half PPR. So Chase Brown, his upside is already limited. I'd go with Breece Hall just to minimize that risk of playing 2 Bengals players. But I will play Breece over McLaurin at this point. Unfortunately so, because I really was looking forward to playing him with Jaden Daniels. Appreciate the super chat, man. Always good to see you in here. Woodchuck's Fantasy Football, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. 5-2, no PPR league. 8 out of 12 make the playoffs, no buys. Looking at matchups, weeks 15 to 17, who would you rather have, Rice and Andrews or Pitts and Egbuka to make a run for the ship? Offered trade to get the latter. Thank you. So you're asking me, what you're telling me is that you offered Rashee Rice and Mark Andrews for Pitts and Egbuka? If that's the case, just want to know I'm on the same page with you. So let's look at schedules. Chiefs schedule, weeks 15 through 17. So they play the Chargers, the Titans, and the Broncos. So one of those matchups he'll be facing. One of those matchups he's going to be facing Pat Surtain, which is not ideal at all. And he'll also be facing potentially L'Jarius Sneed if he can ever get healthy. And I do think of L'Jarius Sneed as a pretty good cover corner as well in Tennessee. But he hasn't been healthy, so I don't really think of that as like the worst matchup ever. So, but obviously that Pat Surtain matchup is a massive problem, and that's championship weekend, so that could be a real issue. Now let's look at Mark Andrews' schedule. Bengals, that's a great matchup. Patriots, I don't mind it super much. And then Packers, that could be tough. that schedule doesn't really bother me too bad. I don't think there's a massive red flag on that schedule. But the Chiefs schedule with Pat Surtain is tough. Now let's look at the Falcons schedule. Okay, they have the Bucks, good matchup. The Cardinals, solid. The Rams, pretty solid. That's a pretty good schedule for a tight end right there. And then let's look at the Bucks. They have the Falcons, the Panthers, and the Dolphins. Great matchups across the board. I will say this. Like, the matchups, you clearly went for this trade because the matchups for both those players are fantastic. And I'm not going to argue with you on that. They are. I will say this. Even at this point, we're about to get into week 8, right? So I appreciate forward thinking, especially when you're 5-2. I am a little bit reluctant to heavily rely on schedules at this point. Like, typically, for me personally, like, you guys over the next couple of weeks, like, I'll probably drop a playoff related video in like the next 3 weeks. I would probably bet, like, once we get closer to November or in November, I'll probably start to drop some more playoff videos. And the reason I wait a little bit longer is because there's still a lot of time. Like, yes, on the surface, playing Denver is a bad matchup. But Pat Surtain, like, I'm not wishing this, but, like, injuries happen. You know, like, injuries. Look at the 49ers. I mean, this team has been freaking ravaged. I mean, not just them. The Commanders are being ravaged. The Bucks are being ravaged. The Ravens have been ravaged. I mean, there's a lot of good teams that we thought were going to be really good that have turned out to be really, like, injury-riddled this season, really affecting their team. So my whole point in saying that is, like, a lot of things can happen, and it's not that I think this is like some really big mistake to do this trade. Like, if you're trading Rice and Andrews for Pitts and Egbuka, it's relatively close. Like, I don't think that there's a huge upgrade you're getting from getting Egbuka and Pitts for the rest of the season. Like, Egbuka and Rice, both top-tier receivers for me, and Pitts and Andrews, I would actually favor Andrews for the rest of the season. So I don't love doing this move. Again, the way I think about trades is, especially if you're 5-2 or 6-1, you're in great position. Like, a lot has to go wrong for you to not make the playoffs. The way I look at trades when you're that level of a team is you don't want to make them unless they clearly upgrade your team. You don't want to make lateral moves. This feels like a lateral move to me. Like, that doesn't really feel like one of those trades I would make right now, as opposed to, like, in week 12, I would be interested in making that trade. Like, if week 12 happened and all those guys were healthy, I would say, yeah, I kind of want to revisit that trade because I do want that playoff schedule. But right now, there's still too many things that could go wrong here for both of those teams. Matchups could get better than they looked or worse than they looked. And I just think that realistically, it doesn't really offer enough for me to, like, really endorse this one for you. So I'll probably stick, to be honest with you. I'll probably take the Rice and like it depends on who you have. Like, if I had Rice and Andrews, I would stick. If I had Pitts and Egbuka, I would stick. The bottom line is I don't want to make that trade because it's so even. But if you're not including the trade partners that you would be sending, and you were asking me which group you would want, I probably would end up going with the I mean, they're so close. I'd probably end up going with the Rice and Andrews side. Appreciate the super chat, man. Good to see you in here as always, Woodchucks. H13 Productions, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. 12-team PPR, 2 flex, 3 and 4. Quarterback Baker, running back Kyron, Scatterbu, Judkins, Brown, Dowdle, Woody, Benson, wide receiver Rashee Rice, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Addison, and Flowers. Offer is MHJ, Flowers, and Brown for London. Also got offered Johnston for Addison. Okay, so let me address your first one, which is MHJ, Flowers, and Brown for London. So I'm assuming when you say Brown, you're saying Chase Brown. That's what I'm assuming. So I obviously, like I said, like I've said this a bunch tonight alone, and a bunch over the last week. Like people who have Chase Brown should be actively and aggressively pursuing trades to get off of Chase Brown. Like capitalize on that solid game that he just had, because you're not going to get many more games like that. So I don't have a problem sending away Chase Brown, that's for sure. He's a flexible option, but nobody you're ever going to feel comfortable flexing. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy I don't feel comfortable flexing, but I understand people still like his upside. And there's Marvin truthers out there still, so they can have him. Like, I don't want him. I sent him away in one of my redraft leagues without any hesitation. Really the piece that, like, I don't love giving up is Zay. Like, I actually like Zay. I think this maybe is a bias thing. I was big on Zay in the pre-draft process. I called him a breakout wide receiver. And honestly, like even though it's been rocky, like I actually still see a lot of breakout traits throughout the season. Like go back to week 1, he was dominant, right? Week 1 against the Bills, he had 28 fantasy points in a full PPR. Then he comes out and has 15 fantasy points, full PPR against the Browns. Then in week 3, he has one of those Zay games where it's like, what happened? Are we looking at the same Zay? And then in week 4, Lamar goes down and it all gets weird. So he gets really targeted without Lamar, which shows me a couple things. So like, if you look at all the games without Lamar, so this game was with him, without him, mostly without him. He had 8 targets in week 4. In week 5, he had 5 targets, led the wide receivers. Week 6, he had 10 targets, led the wide receivers. And in week 7, they had a bye week. So the takeaway that I have watching Zay over the last couple of weeks without Lamar is that there was clearly an offensive game plan emphasis to continue to use him as their wide receiver 1 in the offense, which I like. Like that shows me that the team is committed to him. So I look at it and I'm like, I don't love the prospect of giving him away because I view him similar to Derrick Henry on the same team as more of a buy low candidate rather than a sell high. I'm not totally against sending him away, but I do think that London is the upgrade over all those guys. I will say this though, like if you give away Marvin and Flowers, you'll have Rasheed, an injured Wilson, and Jordan Addison and London. So Rasheed and London will be your every week starters, but you've got a 2 flex, right? So you've got Kyron and Scattaboo and Judkins, 3 good options. Rasheed, Drake London, and Addison in the meantime. There's no question you're a little thinner, but your running backs are so strong, it actually does make sense. Like it does kind of make sense to upgrade your team a little bit here at wide receiver because that kind of is your weakness. I think that's actually a pretty good offer. I really do. I think that could upgrade your team. I hate giving up Zay, and I think that's my real pullback here, but it really does make sense for your team. Like, your running backs are set. You could get an upgrade, but, like, we could think about that later. Really, your wide receiver room is what needs help. So I think it does make sense for your team because you're not going to give up, like, a startable. You're giving up startable options, but you're not giving up, like, a consistent flex. So I think I would make the Drake London move. You got offered Johnston for Addison. This is an interesting one. And I could see both sides of this one. I think it's a really close move. And again, whenever it feels like almost a lateral move, I want to take into account a couple different things here. So number one, Jordan Addison has been great since coming back. I do have concerns with him still. And I know like I'm going to sound like the same hater that people thought I was. First of all, I never hated Addison. I don't hate any of these players. Like I have opinions and I'm very strong with them, but like Never hated Addison. I liked him better than Quentin Johnston out of the draft. I remember that year I got freaking barbecued for it. People were like, Quentin Johnston's a much better prospect. You should shut up. And it's like, well, to this point, it's looked like I've been the right one. So a lot of yahoos owe me an apology. But like, I think that when it comes down to these two guys, I have more concerns with Addison moving forward, only because at some point this year, they're going to go back to J.J. McCarthy. They will. And when that happens, man, I think things can get really bad. I mean, think about the weeks that we saw J.J. McCarthy, right? Week 1, Justin Jefferson got 7 targets. That's not a lot. And he targeted 2 other wide receivers 1 time. Just think about that for a second. Go back to week 7. Jordan Addison had 12 targets and JJ had 10 and Naylor had 4. That's 26 throws between 3 wide receivers. In week 1, 9 throws between 3 and one of them got 7. Maybe it's just 1 week, right? Let's go to week 2. Jefferson got 6, Naylor got 5, and Adam Thielen got 3. 14 targets between 3 players. I'm telling you guys, man, I think the moment that J.J. McCarthy gets back, people may be ready to see the end of Carson Wentz, and I don't blame you. Like, Wentz has not been good, but I'm telling you guys, don't forget how bad J.J. McCarthy was. And if you think that he's about to come back and look like a different player after missing what? What is it now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. He's about to miss his 6th straight game. If you think he's going to come back after missing 6 straight games off an ankle injury, looking like a completely revamped player, you're crazy. Crazy. And that's what worries me with Addison. Because Justin Jefferson will get targets in this offense, and if it looks anything like it did the first 2 weeks with JJ, Addison will suffer big time. I don't want anything to do with that. Not anything. Like, Addison is obviously still a great player and one that will be playable, but like I think his consistency will become a problem. So I actually like the move. Like, I really do. Quentin Johnston is a guy that just has the one thing when it feels like a lateral move like this. The one thing when it comes to wide receivers in particular, give me the better quarterback situation. And QJ unquestionably has a far better quarterback situation with Herbert. Really, the only question last week was that, yeah, he was on the field 68 snaps compared to Ladd McConkey at 67. So, like, in theory, he was 100% back because he basically played every snap. But 5 targets and the way they used him, they were not as, like, gung-ho about giving him tons of deep work. Kind of indicated he wasn't fully back yet. But I think he will have more big games. I really do. I think QJ is the better player. So, not the better player, but the better fantasy player moving forward. So, I would say QJ, I definitely want in that trade. I would definitely take him. Appreciate the super chat. Tariq Washington, appreciate the super chat. Trade idea, Jacobs for AJ. Opponent is 5-1. Has Hurts. Jacobs for AJ Brown? Are you asking me if you should trade Josh Jacobs for AJ Brown? Because if that's the case, that's a hell no from me. I would never do that trade in a million years. But if you're asking me to trade AJ Brown for Josh Jacobs, I would 100% try to do that move if they have Jalen Hurts. Like, that makes a lot of sense for their team in theory. I don't know if they'll do it, but in theory, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I'll be honest, like that trade seems a little far-fetched, and I am definitely one who likes to take chances. Like, the worst anybody could say in a trade is no, right? So there is a definite, ceiling in most leagues. Like, people are not going to take like ridiculous trades unless you're in a really bad league with other people. But in most leagues, like there's a ceiling on how bad you can fleece somebody. And this feels like a fleece job. You're trading AJ Brown for Jacobs. So yeah, I think that I personally think that it's a great move for your team if you can make this happen, but I don't think it will, to be honest. But again, the worst they could say is no. And it does, like, in theory, benefit their team because they're getting the stack with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. So, like, I could see this one possibly working, but if it was me and someone offered me A.J. Brown and Josh Jacobs, I would laugh them out of the building. Like, not saying that you're stupid. Like, you are not stupid for trying to make this trade happen. It makes your team better. Like, that is not a stupid idea to make your team better. I would do the same thing. Like, I've given people a lot of BS trades that I know wouldn't go through, and sometimes they do. Like, that's the thing. Worst I can say is no. So, like, I just think it's a little hard to envision this one working out. Like, I could see a world where it does because of the Hurts component, but, like, I don't think that it would. Jacobs is so clearly the better fantasy option on a week-to-week basis. But if you can make it happen, 100% do it. I definitely would do that. Appreciate the super chat. Nate Willis, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Hey, legend. Oh, stop. I just picked up Flacco off waivers to replace Goff, but I'm hearing whispers Rodgers might be more lucrative this week. Thoughts? Yeah. Maybe you heard those whispers from me because I have been talking a lot about this week. I think that this game, Green Bay and Pittsburgh, could be a shootout. Like, I think it's low-key a shootout game. And I think there's direct evidence that would, like, back that up. Because if you look at what was the one game that Rodgers had a fantastic fantasy day. Like, last week was good. Very good. 24 fantasy points. But he played a fantastic game against the Jets. 26 fantasy points. What do him and the Jets have in common? Oh, yeah, they just... Not only did the Jets let him go, if you guys remember... This is how dysfunctional the Jets are. Not that Aaron Rodgers was good. He wasn't good for the Jets. But this just shows how dysfunctional they are. So Aaron Rodgers decides he wants to play. He said he was getting on a plane to say that he'll come play for them. Aaron Glenn, the new head coach, literally tells him when he gets there, oh, yeah, we don't want you back. Like, he could have spared him the time to do that. Like, he could have spared him the time and just called him and said, like, hey, we don't want you back. Like, they were trying to, like, screw with Rodgers and, like, how long he notoriously takes to make a decision. But look at how much it backfired on them. Like, Justin Fields was the guy that you went for. Like, how stupid of a franchise are you to do that? I'm sorry for Jets fans. Like, you guys have it tough. I'm not trying to insult you guys. Your organization, though, like, you know it's awful. I digress. I mean, the Jets, though, like, he wanted to show them up, is my point in saying all this. So he comes out and was dominant. Now, I've been saying the same thing in regards to this week. There is a stat out there that I saw earlier this year. Before the season actually even started, I screenshotted it on my phone in, like, August when I saw it pop up on my phone that Aaron Rodgers plays the Packers in Week 8. Here we are in Week 8. And if he beats the Packers this week, he will have beaten every single NFL team at least one time in his NFL career. That means a lot. Like, that might not mean that has no impact in our fantasy teams to you or me, right? Like, that stat means nothing. It's not like he's going to get 50 points to the week this week if he wins this game because of that stat. Like, that stat means very little to you and me as fantasy managers. NFL players, that means a lot, particularly quarterbacks. That means a lot. So I can guarantee you, my dad and I have been having this discussion. I think the Steelers are going to show up in a big way. I think they possibly could win this game. Like, I'm not going to say they will because I think the Packers are a good team. But I think they're going to get up to play. And I think Rodgers is going to look really good. So if I'm looking at Rodgers versus Flacco this week, I would definitely pick Rodgers, and I've got him ranked higher than Flacco this week. And again, my quarterback ranking is not completely set in stone, so like don't take it verbatim. But as of now, I've got Rodgers ahead of Flacco, only because I think with the Jets game, like there's just a much higher likelihood that the Packers are beating the Steelers and they have to play catch up, and Rodgers has to throw the ball more. Then I think it's the same odds as the Jets losing to the Bengals and the Bengals being able to run out the clock. Like, as bad as the Bengals ground game is, they're playing the Jets. I mean, this is the worst team ever. So, like, I think that Flacco's got a limited window of opportunity here, where Rodgers, I think, is going to be competitive all game. So I personally am going with Rodgers. If it's between Flacco and Rodgers, I'm going to go with Rodgers because I think that the matchup, while not ideal necessarily, he's going to get up to play in this one. I'm going to go Rodgers. Appreciate the super chat, man. Always good to see you in here, Mr. Nate Willis. Masab123, appreciate the super chat. 6-1, I have Ekbuka, JSN, London, McBride, Higgins, McCaffrey, Brees, Etienne, and Chase Brown. Should I trade for Gibbs? Probably will give up London and Chase, Brees and Etienne, or Chase and Etienne, or should I keep my depth for buys? Okay. So, again, you're 6-1. No drastic moves need to be made when you're a 6-1 team, and the only time I'm trading if I'm 6-1 is if I'm clearly like if I'm setting up my team to become immortal in some way, I'll make the trade. But if I'm doing a lateral move, it's just not worth it for me. I'll give you an example. In one of my redraft leagues, I'm 5-2, and I'm trying right now to trade Travis Etienne and Waddle for Roma Dunze and Jalen Warren, because I have Christian McCaffrey at running back, and I also have Jordan Mason. So Jalen Warren becomes my de facto RB2/RB3 with Jordan Mason. But I've got McCaffrey. At wide receiver, Waddle is my wide receiver 1 right now. It's Waddle, actually Ladd McConkey, Waddle, and Brian Thomas Jr. Getting Roma Dunze, if he hits, could be a massive upgrade for me and become a major part of me winning a championship. But you see where I'm going, right? Like, I'm only wanting to make trades if it really sets my team up to really chase a chip. You're trying to trade for Jahmyr Gibbs, which is a good direction to go in. Like, if you got Jahmyr Gibbs with Christian McCaffrey, you would be setting yourself up for immortality. I think what you're showing me here is like that first one, London and Chase, that's a no-go to get Jahmyr Gibbs. That is a no-go. Jamar Chase, like, I will say this. Chase Brown, not Jamar Chase, I'm sorry. London and Chase Brown, like that's definitely a move I would be trying to make for sure. Because if you give up like someone like London or, you know, even McBride, right? Probably not the smartest move to give up. I think probably the best one is the London and Chase thing for your team, because if you give up London to get Jahmyr Gibbs, your lineup would be Ekbuka and JSN on a weekly basis, which is fantastic. T. Higgins is a flexible option. And then McCaffrey and Jahmyr Gibbs as your running back 1 and 2. And then you'd have Etienne as a flexible option as well. Like, you're not really losing anybody right now as far as flex options go, because you're getting a massive upgrade at RB2. Brees and Etienne, I just don't think you'll be able to do that. Like, I would imagine that the only realistic shot you have in getting Jahmyr Gibbs is that London and Chase Brown move. I would definitely, like, the first one I would try to do is the Brees and Etienne. Like, I'm willing to give up both those guys to get Jahmyr Gibbs It's just a much better upgrade. If you can't do that, I would step up my game and send out London and Chase just so they can get an elite player back. That makes sense to me. I think that's the best shot you have to make this one happen is by you have to give up like a really good player. You can't just, in order to get a superstar in fantasy, you can't just give up like 2 mid-tier options, right? Like Brees and ETN are both guys that are like, ETN's better, but like they're both flexible RB2s, right? So like nobody's going to take that for Jahmyr Gibbs, who's probably their RB1. So you have to get a little bit more gritty if you want a player like Jahmyr Gibbs. But if you could do it for Brees and ETN, that's ideal. And especially for Chase Brown and ETN. But I just have a feeling that won't happen. I think the only way it happens is if you give up London and Chase Brown, and even then it may not happen. Like you may have to give up Egbuka and Chase Brown. Like that's the only way this might get done. But London and Chase Brown is that's a good offer. Like I think that I wouldn't take it, but I think that's the best way for you to build your team to where it works for you to make this trade, and I think it gives you the best shot to be able to acquire him. Appreciate the super chat. George Brennan, appreciate the super chat. Always good to see you. Possible Judkins is league winner in 2026. 2026. I think the thing with like league winning players is I talk about this a lot in the offseason. I have like a formula I follow, right? Like a lot of people who know me, who came to my channel last year, a lot of people knew me as the guy who found Chuba Hubbard when like most people ignored him last year. And I didn't find him by chance. Like I have a formula that I ran and he was like the perfect fit for it. So I have a formula for like those types of like what I call league winning running backs, right? Like someone like Chuba Hubbard was a league winner last year. Even though he wasn't a top 10 guy or top 5 guy, he was a league winner because he was the RB 15.5 PPR format. But he averaged like, I think he was like top 10 in fantasy points per game. Like he was really good. But he was also a late round draft pick, right? Well, here's the thing with Judkins, right? Judkins, his draft price for next year is only increasing. And I think that as time goes on, it's going to continue to be that. So Judkins, the only way he's a league winner is because like if I had to project things out right now, like if Judkins keeps going on the same trend and he's like continuing to be this like great fantasy player, he's going to get drafted no later than round 3 next year. So like in order for him to be a league winner in 2026, he has to be dominant. Like you have to get like Jonathan Taylor this year, for example, right? Like Jonathan Taylor was a 2nd round pick in fantasy this year. But he's a league winner because he's the RB1 in half PPR and the RB2 in full PPR. Like he's having a dominant season. Well, he's a 2nd round pick. So the only way he would be a league winner is if he's doing what he's doing now. Guys like trying to think of other guys like, you think of a running back like Cam Scatterbu this year, right? Like Cam Scatterbu, I would also call him a league winner. While he's not a top 5 running back in fantasy right now, he's a top 10 guy. And think about where you drafted him at. Like his price was so low that he comes out of nowhere and he immediately gives you a top tier option as like a flex. Right? So like league winner is a term I hold very sacred, to be honest with you, because like you can't just like draft Drake London in round 2, have him do what he's doing this year and call him a league winner. Like that's not really what that is. Like he may be one of your best players, but he's not really a league winner. You get my drift? Like Jonathan Taylor is a 2nd round pick this year, and he's a league winner so far because he's been electric. He's the RB1 in half PPR and the RB2 in full PPR. But he was a 2nd round draft pick, so he's a league winner. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, yes, he's a league winner, but he was a 1st round pick. So the expectations are so high when your draft capital is high. And I think that's what Judkins is about to do. Like, if Judkins stays on this same trajectory, he stays on the same graph, which is just continuing to go up like this, right? If he stays there on that path, he's going to be a third-round pick next year at the very latest. Like, people will be drafting him in round 2, possibly round 1. I think there's probably he probably won't be a round 1 guy because of the fact that he's on the Browns. But round 2, round 3 is where you're going to get Quinshon Judkins. So, I mean, it's definitely possible that he could be a league-winning type of guy. But I will say, like, I hold that term very sacred to me personally, only because of the fact that league winners are two types of guys. Number one, you're a high-round draft pick, and you are the RB1, wide receiver 1. You're a top 3 guy at your position, and you needed to be that because you were drafted really high. And the other way you become a league winner is because if you were a late-round draft pick and you're a top 15 guy, that's a league winner as well. So it's harder. I would say it's a little bit harder for Judkins to become a league winner because his draft price for next year is just getting a lot higher. But definitely possible. Appreciate the super chat, man. RJ Bacani, appreciate the super chat. 5-2, Knicks, Dobbins, Rashad White, Jamar Chase, Ekbuka, Rico, Tet, Tyler Warren, Daniel Jones, Bucky, Kyron, Tez, Gadsden, Benson, and Evans on the bench. Moves? Well, you're going to have to drop Evans. He's done. I'm pretty certain of this. I'll vet this really quick before I definitively tell you to drop Mike Evans, but I'm pretty sure he's done. Let's read this Sports Illustrated article. When Mike Evans could return to Bucs after the surgery. This puts Evans out for around 8 weeks or fewer, meaning he could return around week 15 against the Falcons. That's the early end. Like, that's best case scenario. Mike Evans returns in week 15. And it's the first week of your fantasy playoffs. Like, Mike Evans, realistically, unless you have an IR spot, probably just not worth holding, especially since you have Benson. Like, Trey Benson, at the very least, we're going to get him back around, like, week 10 or 11. So, like, he could realistically become a much more important piece to your team than Mike can. Mike, if he comes back at all, it's going to be in your fantasy playoffs, and he won't even be probably 100%. Like, I will say this. I had worries about Mike Evans before all the injuries were piling up because Mike really wasn't dominant at any point this year. Like, Mike's first couple of games, he had 10 fantasy points on 8 targets, 10 fantasy points on 11 targets, and 13 fantasy points on 8 targets. Like, Mike was really never dominant this year on dominant volume. Like, in previous years, he would be fantastic in fantasy. But, like, that was never the case with Mike. And it took me back to the ultimate concern that I had with Mike before the season started, is that he's right there at that age cliff. And I didn't really see anything to suggest this season, while he was healthy, that he was, like, breaking my expectations. So I had concerns with Mike, and now I definitely have more concerns because he just can't seem to stay healthy right now. So I think unless you have 2 2 IR spots, you've got to drop Mike, and you've got to move on, and you've got to get another guy to help you win. Because, like, 5-2, you're in good position, right? Like, you're definitely in good position. And I remember doing this team breakdown as part of your membership. And by the way, RJ, if you have not claimed your new price on FS Roundup as a premium customer, make sure to claim it. Monthly drop from $8.88 to $6 a month. But I remember breaking down this team for you and telling you, like, to really just, like, outside of, like, a couple trade ideas, like, you had a really good team. And I was telling you to stay put with it. your running backs are definitely still like a little bit shaky, only because of Bucky's injury. Like you've got good depth at running back. Like I don't want it to sound like your depth is bad. I mean, Rico Dowdle, J.K. Dobbins, Rashad White as your depth when there's a healthy Bucky and a healthy Kyron is really good. But your receivers are really good, right? Like you have Jamar Nekbuka, your top tier in wide receivers. Your tight end is top tier. I think that for me personally, I would personally try to get, outside of cutting Evans and moving on for another waiver wire option, like Brashard Smith, Darius Slayton, those types of guys, I would try to move, again, I know we talked about this in the breakdown. Daniel Jones, I was fine with you keeping at the time because Bo Nix was being inconsistent. I'm a little more on board with Bo as like a standalone quarterback at this point. Like I think I'm okay with moving on from Daniel Jones in your situation because we've finally seen the Bo Nix breakout. And I do think it's going to be getting better because their schedule gets better. So Bo Nix to me is a guy I'm fine with just having as my quarterback one. Packaging Daniel Jones with somebody like Rico Dowdle or J.K. Dobbins to get a massive running back upgrade. And maybe Gadsden to sweeten the pot. Feels like a good move. Like try to get like a take Gadsden, Daniel Jones, Rico or Dobbins, and try to move up to somebody like James Cook, Derrick Henry, to really give yourself like a really good pop in this back half. Because I think those guys could do that. That's kind of my recommendations for you. Don't do anything crazy, but I think there's a couple moves we could still make. Appreciate the super chat, man. Always good to see you in here, RJ. G Medina, always good to see you too. Appreciate the super chat. With Daniels out, please pick one. Flacco, Rodgers, Mariota. Yeah, it's tough, man. I said this, was kind of going through this debate with Flacco and Rodgers earlier. I want to reiterate this to everybody here. Quarterback rankings not entirely set in stone yet. Not yet. I'm still, whenever I get off the live stream tonight, I'll be tinkering with them again. So my final quarterback rankings will either be up late tonight after the stream is over or tomorrow morning. So if you have a premium membership at FS Roundup, you can go on the site and monitor my rankings updates. So, and we're actually just kind of curious. We're actually kind of tinkering with the idea of eventually adding a notifications system to where, like, if I make rankings updates, you'll get updated about them. So let me know what you think of that for premium subscribers. And again, if you want access to my weekly top 250 rankings, that is for $6 a month behind the premium subscription. Again, I said it earlier tonight. I'm definitely leaning Rodgers. Like, Rodgers is my guy that I'm leaning over both Flacco and Mariota, because the one thing with Rodgers, man, he is a competitive guy when it comes to, like, he's obviously a competitor, but the one thing about Rodgers that I think gets kind of overlooked sometimes is he's like a very vengeful guy. Like, Aaron Rodgers was always good to Jordan Love, and Brett Favre and him became good friends throughout the years, but, like, at the beginning, like, I remember how vengeful he was towards Brett Favre, and he always kind of wanted to show him up. Not that, like, Brett Favre, obviously, like, he was retired by that time, so it wasn't like, you know, he was ever playing against Brett Favre very often, but, like, he likes to prove people wrong. Like, I remember just, like, this is stuff that I take into account. I'm about to tell you guys, like, have you guys ever seen one of his Joe Rogan appearances? Like, Aaron Rodgers, I think, has done Joe Rogan, like, what, 2 or 3 times now? And I remember on one of those Joe Rogan appearances that he made, he went on Joe Rogan and he told this story about how, like, when he was in college or something like that, and he was like turning in a paper for his for like one of his classes, and she was like really mean to him and basically said like, what do you want to do with your life? And he said, well, I'm going to be an NFL quarterback. And she was like, no chance in hell. Like, you'll never be an NFL quarterback. And he said, watch me. And like, I remember just watching him tell that story and seeing it in his eyes, like, watch me. Like, that's a vengeful guy. And the reason I bring all that up is because I think the Packers game, he's going to get up for. Like, that guy is going to come out slinging. And it may not, like, this is a tougher defense than the Jets, obviously, but it reminds me of that Jets game where he looked like a man possessed. And he had a great fantasy day. Mariota against the Chiefs, bad matchup. Doesn't have that same fire. I'm not going with it. And Flacco, again, I think that they'll be beating the crap out of the Jets to where it won't matter for them to throw the ball much late. So I'll go with Rodgers, man. I'll stick with my gut. Appreciate the super chat, man. Good to see you in here as always. H13 Productions, appreciate the super chat. 12-team PPR, 2 flex, 5 and 2. Quarterback Jay Herbo and Caleb. Running back Saquon, Kyron, Monty, Rashad White, Mixon. Wide receivers are Rashee Rice, QJ Downs, Coleman, Coker, Mike Evans at tight end. McBride and Pitts. Just lost Evans to IR. Any moves I can or should make? Okay, so you have Herb and Caleb at quarterback. It's a 12-team, 2 flex PPR league. So your league, you're on that border there where you're either in position to where a quarterback is, your quarterbacks are possibly low, but you could pick one up on the waiver wire, or the waiver options are not good, depending on how deep your bench is. And I'm walking through that now because, again, I say this to people a lot in team breakdowns. I don't like having 2 quarterbacks on the same roster. Like, I just do not like doing that personally. So I'm weighing the odds of, like, would I move one of these quarterbacks? And I'm leaning towards yes. Like, I really do think that the idea of moving off of, like, Justin Herbert, for example, like off of really good performances in fantasy. I think he's had 2 straight, if I'm not mistaken. But let's vet that. Justin Herbert, I know, was really good last week in fantasy football. He had like 30 fantasy points. Week 6, he had 18 fantasy points. Like, Herbert's had a strong couple of weeks in fantasy to where I almost feel like it's like the right time to move off of him. Not that I don't think he'll be good. Like, I think Herbert actually will be a good fantasy quarterback moving forward. But, again, I just don't like the idea of keeping 2 quarterbacks. And Caleb is the guy that I prefer because, again, like, I actually prefer him rest of season over Herbert as is. But especially the last 2 games, they've been bad for Caleb, so it's not the time to trade him. 5.7 fantasy points last week, 19 fantasy points the week before. Like, Caleb's had a couple down games. Saquon, Kyron, Monty, Rashad White, Mixon. The fact that Saquon is your RB1, RB2, I don't love it. The tough thing with him right now is, like, there's still a lot of Saquon truthers out there, and I don't blame people for being Saquon truthers because he's obviously a great talent. But it just doesn't look right this year. I kicked off the live stream tonight. Now, I'll go through it again briefly because it's been a while. But I kicked off the live stream tonight kind of discussing the debate that was in my comments section earlier today in the running back rankings between my ranking of Saquon versus Henry. And I have a lot more confidence in Henry moving forward because of the fact that Henry is been good. Like, he's been good. Like, Saquon Barkley, if you look at him, you don't even have to watch and you can pick up on this. But especially if you watch the games, Saquon just doesn't look the same as last year. Like, by a long shot. He's averaging 3.3 yards per carry this year. And you look at Henry, on the other hand, that guy still looks freaking good. He's just in bad game scripts without Lamar. But if you look at Derrick Henry over his season, 5 yards a carry, that's typical Derrick Henry. My point in saying that is I think Saquon, like, you're in this unique period right now where Saquon is such a high value target. And a lot of people still view him very favorably, to where it's like, it's not even necessarily like a sell low. It kind of is. Like, any smart manager is not going to give you Jonathan Taylor for Saquon. Like, nobody's going to do that. But, like, you could get Devon Achane. You could get Cam Scatterbo. You could get Quinshon Judkins, James Cook, Derrick Henry. Like, you could get those guys for Saquon Barkley. So I'm kind of looking at him and Justin Herbert as potential trade targets or trade send-offs. I'd stick with your receivers. But what we're going to try to do here is we're going to try to get an upgrade at receiver and running back. And then I would personally take again, it just depends, man. Like, if you're in one of those leagues where your bench is really deep, then it makes sense to hold on to 2 tight ends as well. But, like, in most situations, I don't like having 2 tight ends. What I would personally do is grab Justin Herbert and Saquon. And I actually would go ahead and grab a receiver because I want to kind of upgrade both running backs. I would grab Herbert, Saquon, and Keon Coleman. And I would try to get Derrick Henry and Wan'Dale Robinson. Because I think from there you could really convince someone that, like, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry are on the same playing field. I mean, we just had this debate that I was highlighting on the channel today. Like, some people prefer Saquon still over Derrick Henry. So you could convince someone that's a very similar situation. Whereas, like, you send away Coleman, I think most people will view Wan'Dale as an upgrade over him at this point, but not to the massive, like, extent that it would be for asking somebody like even Jordan Addison, right? Like, Jordan Addison is the type of guy that is, like, Jordan Addison is a higher value target and just has more name value than Wan'Dale. But realistically, like, long season, I kind of still prefer Wan'Dale. So Wan'Dale and, like, Derrick Henry is the type of trade I would try to get for, like, Herbert, Saquon, and Keon Coleman. That's the move I would make. But you're 5-2. Don't do anything too drastic. Appreciate the super chat, man. Twisted Folk, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Appreciate the super chat. Half PPR, flex Mason T or Chubb. I know, SMH. No, listen, I mean, it's bipocalypse, man. Injuries, bipocalypse, it all adds up, man. This is week 8 for you. This is week 8 fantasy football. You're debating between Mason Taylor and Nick Chubb. I get it. I highlighted this today in the running back rankings, which is that Nick Chubb was, like, the first time this year Nick Chubb was outplayed by Woody Marks. Not from a production standpoint. He was just on the field much less than Woody Marks. Like, you can look at the RB usage pie charts that we have on some of these games. You can look at the RB usage pie chart on FSRoundup.com of the Texans this past week. Woody Marks was in on 48 snaps compared to Nick Chubb in 19. Like, he was in there quite a bit. He almost tripled the amount of snaps that Nick Chubb was in on. And he's just been the better back this year. So, like, Nick Chubb is nowhere near a reliable option at this point. Mason Taylor, though, he's not either. Like, Mason Taylor, man, like, I mean, the week where you thought it would make sense for him to have a good game because they had nobody else to throw to, it still didn't do anything for you, right? Like, 4 targets, 3 catches, 31 yards, still isn't good at all. I mean, it just doesn't do anything for your team. I will say, like, you understand it. I mean, you started out you ended the question laughing at it, basically laughing at how tough this situation is for yourself, and it is tough, man. This is brutal. I think I would go with Mason Taylor because I got a hair in my mouth. Ugh, nasty. I think that the situation you're in, regardless of if it's Tyrod or Justin Fields this week, again, they have to throw to somebody. And the receivers there, like, it's not like they're in great position to get a bunch of work. Like, Josh Reynolds, was the wide receiver 1 by targets, but he only had 3 catches for 30 yards on 9 targets. Like, that's awful. So, Mason Taylor, I think he's probably just in line for better volume. Nick Chubb, if he continues this trend of losing work to Woody Marks, and he only gets like 5 to 10 rushing opportunities, they're not high value enough against the 49ers defense to where I think it's good. So I'll go with Mason Taylor over Nick Chubb. Appreciate the super chat. Henry Johnston, Henry and Gersey B. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Henry and Johnston for Judkins and Flowers, currently 3 and 4. Okay. So here's my thing, right? I think that, again, Quinshon Judkins is in this position, and I've been saying this for weeks now. Any good defense in the league, with a defensive coordinator who uses his brain and can see what I see as a fan. Like, all you have to do is watch the Pittsburgh Steelers game against the Cleveland Browns, and you'll recognize that all you have to do if you play the Browns is stack the box to stop Quinshon Judkins and make Dillon Gabriel beat you. Now, Miami is not a good football team, so they couldn't do that, right? But not every team they play this year is going to be Miami. Now, ironically, this week, they have a matchup that I think is going to figure that out, and Judkins looks bad this week. And I think that this question, if you asked it to me after this week, it'd be pretty obvious people would prefer Derrick Henry, because I think Derrick Henry is about to flip the script on his entire season this week now that Lamar is coming back. And again, I've been saying this for weeks. Henry's a buy low. And I do think that, listen, I think, I see what you're saying. You would be getting the Henry side. Like, I'm kind of setting it up both ways here. What I'm trying to say is that, listen, Derrick Henry, I think, is a great buy low because he is on a better offense, number one, than Quinshon Judkins, and they're about to rattle off wins. Like, the Ravens' schedule significantly lightens up. I think the one thing with the Ravens, not only has Lamar missed a bunch of games, like he's missed 2 games, not a bunch, 2 games, but their schedule in the first half of the season was friggin' brutal. The Ravens couldn't catch a break. They're about to. They're about to start rattling off some division opponents, the Browns, the Steelers, the Bengals, who are all beatable, especially on the ground, and a lot of out-of-division opponents as well that are beatable too. So I think that Henry is a really good trade target. And again, I think that the teardrop between him and Judkins is going to start to look wider. Because Judkins, yes, he does have an easy schedule. Like, he does have easier matchups still to take on, but he does have those in-division opponents. He's got to play the Steelers one more time. Even though the Bengals are not a good defense, they do have, like, they are in division. They can see what they're seeing with Dillon Gabriel, and they play him twice. And the Ravens, while they're not a good defense, again, like, they have smart coaching over there. All you have to do is stack the box on Judkins, bottle him up, and you'll be fine. And I think that those division opponents will see that. So, yeah, man, I still think personally that Henry and Judkins, that teardrop is pretty, not significant, but it's higher than the teardrop for Johnston and Flowers, who I think Zay is the guy that I prefer still. but I definitely do not. I definitely do not prefer. I definitely do not prefer Zay that much over Johnston because I think Johnston is still going to have very similar game log when you actually look back to the end of the season as Zay does, where Zay is going to put up stinkers still, and Johnston will as well, but Johnston at the very least, like his quarterback is a higher volume thrower on a weekly basis. So I would go with Henry and Johnston. I like it. Yeah, you're getting the Henry you're getting the Henry side. I like it. Appreciate the super chat. Jonathan Lee, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. 7-0. Let's go, baby. Undefeated. 12-man got offered Lamar for Hurts and T. I got CMC, Achane, Henry, Dowdle, Waddle, Devonta Smith, QJ, Goddard, handcuffs for CMC, Achane, Flacco. Should I bite? So you are getting offered Lamar for Jalen Hurts and T. Higgins. So if you give up T. Higgins, your wide receiver room looks like Waddle, Devonta Smith, QJ. Yeah, I don't think it's a bad move necessarily. I will say this. I do wonder with Lamar. I know I've been talking about Derrick Henry, and a lot of my Derrick Henry optimism is tied to the return of Lamar Jackson, who I do think will come back and do better. I will say this though, if this trade was like Baker, and I think Baker's great, but if it was like Baker and T for Lamar, or if it was Jared Goff, like a quarterback that is good, but is not that close to Lamar. Like I think Hurts is having a really good year, right? Like that's my drawback here is that Hurts is having a good year, and I will say this with Jalen Hurts, again, knock on wood, but I said this earlier tonight. Jalen Hurts has been pretty injury prone. Not injury prone. He's been pretty good with injuries throughout his career. Like he doesn't miss much time. And he plays really smart. Like he doesn't run the ball that much these days. And even when he doesn't, like he doesn't ever have like a low fantasy floor because he's always finding a way to either get in the end zone at a running attempt because of the tush push, or he's playing better football throwing the ball. He's done both of those things this year. And on minimal running production, Jalen Hurts has been good. So I do think of this as kind of like a potential lateral move. And again, I'm really big on especially 7-0. You have not lost yet. So it's not ideal for me to make a move like this when you're 7-0 because it doesn't feel like you're getting a significant upgrade. Like, sure, Lamar Jackson has the higher ceiling, right? Like, Jalen Hurts' ceiling is probably around 25 points. I think he actually had like a 30-point game one of the weeks. Let me see. 31. He had a 31-point game against the Rams. He may be good for one more of those, but Lamar can get you like, 35 points, right? Like, and he could probably get you like 3 more 30-point games. So, like, I'm not arguing that Lamar's ceiling is higher. What I am arguing, though, is that I don't think that his floor is actually as high as Hurts. Like, I think Lamar, it just doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like an obvious upgrade. I'll be honest. Like that, and that's my one drawback with trading when you're this good. At 7-0, you should not be making trades that feel like lateral moves. You should only be making trades that feel ridiculously like to your advantage that make your team better and immortal at certain positions. On the surface, getting Lamar Jackson is great, and I like it for certain teams. But in your position, giving up Hurts doesn't feel like a winning move. I think it feels more like a lateral move, and I don't want to make that at 7-0. I'd rather just stick with what you have. Appreciate the super chat. ISO Flip. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Trade Dart for McLaurin. I have Dak. That's a really interesting question. I think that there's definitely like an upside play to this one. I could definitely see it working for you in some situations because, like, if McLaurin comes back and Jaden gets back in, like, he's obviously not playing this week, but if Jaden gets back by, like, week 9 or 10 and Terry's still around, like, it could have major upside for you. I think that there's, again, it kind of goes back to what I was just saying. Like, yes, you have Dak, but you want to maximize, like, all the pieces on your team. And I don't know what your record is, man, but this feels like a lateral move because Jackson Dart, like, the guy was still on waivers this past week. And I think people have come to realize, finally after, like, 4 straight dominant games in fantasy, the guy's just good. Like, he's just a good fantasy player. Because he's got a very consistent floor as a runner. And he's got upside as a thrower, clearly. So, like, Dart is worth his stock, man. Like, Dart shouldn't be on waivers, and I think people have finally come around to that. My point in saying that is that I think I've kind of been ahead of the curve a little bit on Dart. And I think that people are starting to catch up to that. So, typically, it's not smart to trade a player until their value is kind of baked. And I don't think we're done with Dart's value baking yet. I think it's still in the oven. I think it still probably needs, like, maybe turn up the heat a little bit on the oven because I don't think it's there yet. I think Dart personally could go for, you know, like a low-end, like a high-end wide receiver 2 or a mid-end wide receiver 2. And Terry I don't view like that right now. I might be stupid to not view him like that, but I don't. I never did to start the season. I think he could go for a Michael Pittman if you give it a week or two. I think he could go for Cortland Sutton potentially. I think he could go for somebody bigger. So I would personally wait. I don't think I would make this move right now. Appreciate the super chat. And then we'll end on Adrian because I'm getting a little tired. Appreciate the super chat, Adrian. Why doesn't the group want to trade with me? Exam my Q Johnston and Mayfield for Bucky. Wouldn't that be a good trade? Is it because I'm 7-0? That's probably a big reason. I will say, like, the thing with 7-0 teams is you're so immortal in your league that people feel like you're going to screw them automatically by offering them a trade. I've experienced this for years. Ever since I started making YouTube videos on fantasy football, people I'm in football leagues with, fantasy leagues with, are always really reluctant to trade with me. I'm sure I could quantify this, like, if I went back to when I started making videos, but, like, my success rate with making trades go through in my personal leagues has definitely dropped since I started making fantasy videos. Like, definitely dropped. I can't bring up the numbers right now because I've never calculated it, but I do know for a fact, like, there are certain things that, like, do make your league mates less likely to trade with you, and being undefeated is definitely one of those. Like, not just undefeated. Like, if you were 3-0, some people may be like, that doesn't scare me bad, but, like, you're 7-0. Like, that's, you know, people are scared by that. So, I don't know. I mean, I do think that this trade, like, is not a bad one. It's not the worst, but I definitely would take the Bucky side because, like, Bucky, when he comes back in theory, again, is a set and forget player. Maybe, I'm not sure who has, like, the guy who has Baker, I don't know. The guy who you're trading Baker to, I don't know what his current quarterback situation is, but if he has, like, Dak or Hurts or somebody else like Lamar coming off injury, it may not make a lot of sense. So he may not be able to start for them every week. And at the same time, like, Quentin Johnston is not an every week plug and play guy for a lot of teams. So, but, like, taking away a plug and play is kind of a hard proposal, especially for 7-0. I don't think it's a bad trade. Like, it's not a bad trade at all, but I do think being 7-0 definitely has something to do with it. And it's realistically, like I said, if I got this trade from you, I would not take it. Not because you're 7-0, but because Bucky Irving is a plug-and-play guy as soon as he gets back. I get it. The injuries, I've been I've been very transparent. Like, I'm worried about Bucky a little bit in his injury because we're not really getting definitive word. Like, with Godwin, at least, like, we've heard that, like, he's making progress in his rehab. They've been quiet on Bucky, so I do worry a little bit about it. So, I'm worried, but not enough to the point where I'd be willing to sell for this. I think I'd hold Bucky. So, not the worst trade, but I do think 7-0 has a lot to do with it. Appreciate the super chat. All right. We'll end on WTH Blur 5140. Appreciate the super chat. Noel or Higgins with Nico and Kirk out? I think I said this earlier tonight. I actually answered a question like this. I personally think that Jaden Higgins has always been overrated. I was never big on Jaden Higgins out of college. They both came out of the same college, him and Jalen Noel. So I always preferred Jalen Noel. Like, people who are really like some of my biggest supporters on this channel who were with me back in the offseason can vet that I always liked Jalen Noel in Houston over Jaden Higgins. I always have. So I feel kind of vindicated actually watching I actually feel pretty vindicated watching what happened the other night, which is that Jalen Noel by far was their most effective receiver, even with Nico Collins. And Jaden Higgins was ineffective to the capital level. I mean, like, in theory, it should have been like go, go, go opportunity for him, and he did nothing with it. Like, Jaden Higgins, the reason I liked Jalen Noel over Higgins in the offseason is because if you actually watch these two guys, Jalen Noel can create separation, and Jaden Higgins never could. That's the problem with Jaden Higgins. When you get to the end, when you're in college and you're as big as Jaden Higgins is, you can get away with that. No separation you can get away with because you could just box out a lot of defenders. That becomes really hard to do in the NFL, and I think he's struggling with that. Jalen Noel, he doesn't have that size advantage, so he had to basically, this is what I've always said this with smaller receivers. I played receiver in high school and in middle school as well, and it's hard to look at me right now, right? Like, I'm a big guy. Like, I like to eat, and it definitely doesn't look like I was a receiver, but I used to be really skinny, and I was 5'11", 150 in high school. Like, at the beginning, my freshman year, I was 5'11", 150, and my favorite receivers of all time were not Randy Moss, were not Calvin Johnston, were not, bigger guys, right? Like, I loved Marvin Harrison Sr., who was 5'11", and 180 pounds. Antonio Brown, 5'11", 180 pounds. I loved those guys because they were excellent out separation, and that's how you make your bones when you're not a big guy. Jalen Noel's got, he's obviously not either of those guys at a talent level, but he can separate. And that's the one thing I liked about Jalen Noel is that he could separate back in college. So this week I'm going to go with Jalen Noel over Higgins because I just think that he's earning more of a role in the offense. They've got no other choice this week. And I think Higgins will continue to be over-targeted and provide nothing. So what they will give with Noel, I think, is more successful. I'll take Jalen Noel. Appreciate the super chat. And Nathan, what's going on, my man? Appreciate the super chat. I will end with Nathan. Do I trade Bucky for London? Very good question. I think that I've been talking about Bucky quite a bit tonight and my hesitancy with Bucky Irving. Listen, I think that when it comes down to it, my issue is that I really don't know when he comes back. And I think that when he is back, yes, I like him. But realistically, how much more do I like him than London? If Bucky had never gotten hurt and he was averaging 16 fantasy points per game like he is right now, if he was still averaging 16 fantasy points per game, I wouldn't love Bucky that much more than Drake London, because London can have the massive explosion weeks like he had against the Bills in week 6. That's on the table with Drake London. That type of game isn't necessarily on the table with Bucky as much. Bucky can give you 25, but 30, that's not really what Bucky has done. And I see your team is Rome, JJ, Dobbs, Kupp, Smith, Chase Brown, Swift, Mark Spears, Monty, and Brashard Smith. So that definitely gives me context, which I will consider because they're relatively close. I'm leaning the London side. So if you did this, your running back room would be Chase Brown, Swift, Mark Spears, Monty, and Brashard Smith. So you wouldn't have like a clear RB1, but you would have a bunch of guys that you could. I mean, Swift would be your RB1, but you'd have a bunch of like weekly decisions to make on who to play a running back between like Marks, maybe Spears breaks out, the occasional Chase Brown, Brashard Smith maybe breaks out, and Monty. And then your receivers are going to be London, Rome Odunze, JJ. That's a really good receiver group. Romeo Dobbs and Devonta Smith as your wide receiver 4 and 5. That's really good. So I think that it's tough because I really want to pull the trigger, but your running back situation, the only thing I'm considering here is your running back situation without him is a little tough, but you've already made it this far without Bucky. You've made it without him for what's gonna go on to 4 weeks now when he doesn't play this week. I think I'm still leaning towards doing it. I think I would do it. It's very close though. I will say, like, if you are 5-2 or 6-1, I would take the deal because you're not getting anything from him anyways. Or I'm sorry, if you're 5-2 or 6-1, I would not do it because you're not getting anything from him anyways. And you're able to be 5-2 and 6-1 without him. So when he comes back, he's going to solidify your running back position. If I was 4-3 or 3-4 or worse, I would do this because what you're doing isn't working. And he's not giving anything to you anyways. You're 2-6. So I think that you should do this because you need to make a change. And Bucky is not helping you anyways. So why not become more immortal at one position and just play it out with a couple guys that you think are flexible and running back 2 plays. So I think London does give you the big boost that you are looking for. I'd go with London. I would do it. Appreciate the super chat, Nathan. Always good to see you in here. And I'll go ahead and end it there for the night, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. If I did not get to your question tonight, I'm sorry. Was on here for a couple hours, but make sure to go start a start-sit poll for free on fsroundup.com. You can create these start-sit polls for free and vote on them for free as well. You can also get access to my weekly top 250 rankings, the waiver wire tool, the comparison feature, lots of other great tools on the site for $6 a month, which we dropped from $8.88 just a couple days ago. $8.88 to $6 a month is what we dropped it to. And we wanted to, really the point of it was to give access. We wanted to make it more affordable for everybody around the world because we've got hockey on the site now as well. We're getting basketball going. So we wanted people in like Canada, for example, to be able to afford it at a good price as well. So we dropped the price for everybody. Makes sense for everyone. And I can't wait to have you guys on the site. So love you guys. Appreciate y'all being in here. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.